Hello, everybody. Welcome to the World of Brickfilms podcast. I am your host, William of IW Studios. As always, joining with me is my good friend and co-host, Sean Willis of City Penta.
Hello again.
Our special guest is the winner of THAC 2023, the AeroNomad. Hello.
Hello again for the first time.
I could hear you almost said 2022.
Yeah. When I was kind of like, sometimes when I'm sort of rehearsing this in my head, I kept saying 2022. So I somehow managed to not do it this time. So, yeah. But yeah, right off the bat, congratulations on coming first place with Unwavering Dedication, which I know I said this on the live stream. I think I still feel like it's genuinely really true. Is that it's just it kind of feels like a game changer. I feel like the standard of with THAC has gone up so much over the years, but this is kind of unlike anything that, like, in terms of scale and scope, it's really kind of like edging towards like really just sort of like being something, just completely changing it, I think. Like, yeah, it's I just didn't realize this was really like possible within 24 hours. So
Well, thank you for your kind words.
Yeah, so it almost feels like we want to just sort of ask, like, how.
How? That is the question. Yeah. I made this joke on the live stream, but yeah, Unwavering Dedication. And then one of the guys that was helping me with this, he said, all in a day's work, which is kind of true. But yeah, the process, this was my first THAC, so I kind of did as much as I could to prepare. It's a little difficult to prepare for something you don't exactly know how it works. I had done Brawl in 2022, so I kind of knew the format for the contest and broadly what to expect, but 24 hours is a whole different beast. So my preparation kind of was mostly just sort my bricks, make sure everything is clean on the desk. Yeah, that was pretty much my setup.
Yeah, I mean, that's insane that like you make this as your first THAC and like come first place in your first THAC.
Yeah, it's quite exciting.
I mean, maybe it could almost be like if you don't have prior experience, you sort of you don't have these ideas in mind of like, oh, I couldn't do that for THAC, and I definitely can't do this for THAC.
Yeah, it was I think the ambition was a little too high for THAC. Not that I didn't pull it off, but knowing what I do now, I probably wouldn't shoot for something as extravagant in future THACs. But
yeah, so that does sound sort of like, yeah, once you've done it once, you think, oh man, I couldn't possibly, like, yeah, go aim for that standard
right.
Length and everything. But yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't originally going to be that long either. It was, I only had, not to spoil some of the secrets, but I only had probably 2 minutes of footage. That is now probably like 2 minutes and 20 seconds or so of footage that is now stretched into like 3 minutes and 14 seconds, which it was necessary to give some of the more dramatic scenes some breathing room. But I was a little concerned in the edit,
Well, that is generally like people always ask for advice, like if they haven't done THAC before, they're like, what's some good advice going into THAC? And like the first thing I always try to tell people is that like it's practically a contest of like getting away with not animating,
right?
Is the real contest. So like I always try to say that if you can tell the story just through the shot composition and like just visual storytelling, based on just the cinematography, largely more so than the animation within the shots, then you're doing well. And like, and if you have a good handle on those sort of things, then people don't even notice if there's only like a small amount of animation in a nicely laid out shot.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, to try to get away with doing as little as you can, because those are the parts in THAC that you can kind of take shortcuts on, and still have it not affect the final film in a negative way.
And also, like, our sort of judging style is like, I don't want to imply that, obviously if somebody has really good animation, like that is going to help them in the judging. But generally speaking, like if you have a well-told story, a well-made film, like that is more important to us. Like as far as an overall experience in watching a film, we consider the sort of overall big picture to be more important than just like, oh, this one has the most technically complex animation.
Right. It's all about the final film.
I think that as well with like as you were saying then, that you wouldn't want to do something of that scale again. I think in a way it's, you kind of have nothing to improve now because you've done it. You've made something to that scale and you've won. So it's like the pressure is kind of off, isn't it?
I guess so. I don't know. I'm more of the type of person who would do this, like say I wasn't going to do it and then do it again every year. That's just kind of who I am. Especially like, I guess at first I was like, oh yeah, I don't have anything to prove. I'm just, wanting to make a film that I would want to watch, which is generally my philosophy for making Brickfilms. But then I was like, well, I guess this is my first one, so maybe I am trying to like, get my name out there or establish myself in some way. So,
well, yeah, and certainly, I mean, we were saying this on the stream as well, that like it feels really nice to see somebody come along and you've only been on Bricks in Motion for like less than 2 years, or I mean, probably like 1 year as far as in the sort of
in the Discord. I guess we'll talk about it more when if we talk about kind of my start in stop motion, but I only really joined Bricks in Motion and started becoming active during Brawl.
Wow. Because it's like sometimes we sort of get these comments or see them elsewhere where people are like, they only pick the winners who are people who've been around forever. We're always sort of trying to tell them like, well, people who've been around forever have a higher chance of making something on that level because they have more skill from all the over the years built up. Like, we don't care how long someone has been around. It just so happens that if they've been at this for an extremely long time, they're more likely to, make something that'll place like this. But you've come along and you've only been around here for a year and you've made something on this level. So it's like, yeah, that wins, obviously.
Yeah. I just want to kind of quickly add to that thing, like that kind of argument some people make of like the, oh well, yeah, you've been around for 20 years to, it's all conspiracy to get to first place, 20 years into your Brickfilm career. But no, I got to say that it's really impressive. It's just incredibly impressive to see how far you've got to coming first place in THAC, which I've always considered something to be a really difficult feat. I think because not only is it the time frame, but it's always been like the biggest contest. And
yeah, but I consider THAC to have there's like an element of randomness about THAC in what you come out with at the end of it. Like, I feel like it's very hard to make something and like guarantee that it's going to be a winner. Like, you could sort of go into it thinking, yeah, we I've assembled a team and like we're going to make something that's like super impressive. But then if you only have 24 hours, like the story might just not work. Like, it might just not come out that good and you don't have time to fix it. So even if you go into it with like a whole bunch of preparation ready and all that, like there's always this sort of random element. So I think it is really hard to to know that you're gonna come first in THAC or place in the top 3.
Yeah, I definitely had those doubts creep in. It was like 8 p.m. my time, so there was only about a third of the competition left, and that's when I really started to be like, oh, I don't really have anything here. I don't know if this is actually going to work. I don't know if I even have like a story here. It was kind of like, I felt a little bit like a sculptor, just putting blobs of clay onto, on top of each other. But then, through the edit, you start to actually shave off parts of those globs and then make it into something that's actually usable. So you're kind of trying to find the story after just throwing a bunch of stuff onto on top of each other.
The second thing I always tell people is that, yeah, you know, you must know going into THAC that in the late hours, you're probably going to think your film is terrible. You know, you look at all of this unedited footage and be like, this is unreleasable. This is the worst thing I've ever made.
Right.
That's my experience anyway. And a lot of people always say that it looks so bad in like after they've been awake for, you know, 20 hours.
Yeah, I will say too, like, I would not recommend anyone kind of go about THAC like I did in the beginning hours too, because like I woke up like half an hour before the competition started. It started at a perfect time for me, like 6 a.m. Brilliant time. So I kind of got ready, got my cup of coffee, logged on to Bricks in Motion, kept refreshing the page until I saw the theme. And my scriptwriter, who he's fantastic with words. I'm really bad at the script writing part, so I'll like brainstorm kind of story ideas and visual structure and all that. But when it comes down to like dialogue, I just fall apart. So Keenan, he's been one of my best friends for my whole life. He works as a medical scribe in an ER, and he couldn't get his shift off, and so he was like frantically texting me like in between patients and stuff, like script ideas and shooting me over different lines of dialogue. Wow. And finally I just had to be like, yeah, this ain't working. So I was like, I have an idea for what the visual storytelling is going to be. And so I was like, I'm going to do that. And, you know, once you're off work in 12 hours, like you can send over the kind of the narration portion of it, and we'll just kind of hope that it fits, which that's why I don't recommend it, because I mean, it was, you know, that could have gone a few different ways, but
that's a really
nice
story.
He's just fantastic. So yeah, he was, you know, I had 5 people, including me, working on this, and we were across, all of us were in the United States, but we were across 4 different states, 3 different time zones, trying to work on this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I know people will probably think like, oh, is it unfair like when people have like a whole team working on a THAC entry? But yeah, I mean, yeah, like when hearing a story like that, like it's hard to coordinate multiple people.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
That's the thing. I feel like that's something that like I think people might not even realize when you think, and like, you know, on the surface, like the idea of 5 people working on something, it seems like that's like a team, but then organizing that and making it all kind of flow together is itself like more challenging than doing it by yourself. So
yeah, but it feels like you were saying that you don't recommend people like do it like this. I was thinking, like, I was imagining the THAC entry opening with a title card, like, you know, this THAC entry was made by trained professionals. Do not try this at home.
Yeah. Hopefully, I won't have to do that again, though, because that's kind of the that's kind of what kickstarted my doubts, where I was like, I still don't have the narration, and like the visual storytelling makes sense up to this point, but I don't really know, you know, what that's going to add to it. And fortunately, there was enough time to kind of reshoot some parts. I ended up shooting a lot more footage than I actually used, which is a little heartbreaking always when you put a lot of time into something and just cut it. But you know, I would encourage people to cut things if they don't work with your film. Don't just put them in just because you spent a lot of time on
the time animating it.
Right. But yeah, it turned out very well, I think. And man, the music too. Every time I send over footage to my brother who does the music, and then he sends me back a little clip of it, and I put it together, it's just reinvigorating all over again. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, original music, it's a secret weapon.
It very much so, yes.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we always, you know, when we see like the credits come up, original soundtrack, we're like, oh, it was original music.
Yeah.
I mean, especially with this entry as well, when we were watching it like together as judges, and you know, for a while there you don't see the mouths moving because it's narration, and then like, of course at the start we're like, oh my god, this looks amazing, but then like halfway through we're like, oh my god, and it has digital mouth animation as well.
That was something before THAC started that I was like, I've seen a couple entries from previous years with mouth animations, but this is something that I want to do to like stand out. And halfway through THAC I was like, okay, we have to cut that. We don't have time for that at all. And after I got the narration, we were putting things together, I was like, it's actually kind of necessary to let people know that like when he's talking like to the camera, to the gravestone at the end, like he's actually talking there. It's not more voiceover.
Oh yeah,
so
not voiceover. Yeah,
it was good visual separation. And fortunately, I had a coworker of mine in my day job. He kind of hung out with me the second half of the day, and I quickly taught him how to do the voice or the mouth animations, and he grinded that out right there. So
Wow.
The more we hear about this, the crazier it gets.
It was pretty crazy. I spent like, I think I submitted with maybe an hour left in the competition because I wanted to use like as much time as I could, but I wanted to leave time for uploading. Like you never know if it's maybe it's rejected for this reason, and okay, I have a little bit to fix it, a little time to fix it or do this or that. But yeah, I used like every second I could. So
Well, it does show.
I mean, I do like to try to be rendering with some time left in case the render fails. But I mean, I totally would have assumed that this was like a submitted in the last 5 seconds entry.
Yeah, thankfully not. A big part of that too was, so I have a great day job where I get to do video production in like a top-notch studio, and I also have access to it on the weekends to do personal stuff. So I actually drove 20 minutes away from my place to do the editing, and we got super great internet, so uploading times are non-existent practically, and we got 3080 graphic cards in them, so After Effects is not a problem. So yeah, I'm very blessed to have had those resources available to me in the post-production process.
Yeah, I mean, of course it makes sense that you're doing video professionally. You take one look at the film and it's like, well,
Yeah, it does show.
there must be some professional background here.
Yeah, this is my video production job is a lot more corporate, and so this is a really good sort of creative outlet for those skills. Because I get to make worlds that you'd never be able to go to without millions of dollars of budget. I can make a jungle in my room in 24 hours. I can make a spaceship or anything I want, really.
You can create an entire lore and a whole this whole kind of concept in 24 hours, and there's all this world, these builds, and just like it's just incredible. And I do really connect to that, what you're saying, and about having this kind of outlet where if you're working in media and you've got your own kind of the more like maybe corporate side of things, where you're still doing something that you obviously really love doing, but you're finding there's some sort of separation between that and like doing something like this where it's like your hobby and you're creating kind of just exactly what you want to make, and it's nice to have that kind of separation. I think definitely.
I wanted to say about the mouth animation, I mean, of course we have to say the usual sort of stuff, like it's impressive to see mouth animation in a Brawl entry, but like there's been like 1 or 2 THAC entries, but it's super impressive in a THAC entry. But I mean, similar stuff we probably would have said before about mouth animation in contest entries, but like you can get away with the figure barely moving if you have the mouth animated,
right?
And of course, if the figure doesn't move much, then there's not all that many frames to actually track the mouth onto. I mean, like usually I prefer the sort of just have a nice middle ground. Like if I'm doing digital mouths, but it's not a time limited project, I'll have the figure move a decent amount, not all the time, but like for a THAC entry, you really can get away with the figure holding still for a long time if the mouth is moving, and people don't really think about it or notice it.
Yeah, a little digital zoom and mouth animations goes a long way. That was one of those sad cuts I had to make where I had him moving a lot more during that time. But I opened After Effects to put the mouth animation file in to track it, and I was like, I do not have time for this. So I just overlaid it in Premiere Pro.
Well, I think you made the right call there in what to cut,
Yeah.
which one to drop.
Yeah, that is like obviously not an easy thing to navigate in THAC, but I think a huge part of that process in THAC is working out like what kind is to cut and what you're able to cut without affecting the quality. And luckily, I think you're very clever in that aspect of working out like I could still kind of manage to salvage something from this and make something that works.
Mm-hmm. Actually, just in talking about like rendering and uploading and stuff, did you only come up with the title of the film afterwards?
Yes, that was like that was the last thing I did. I still think there's a better title for that film out there. I just did not have the mental capacity to come up with it. And I was like, oh, this line was said a couple times in the film. That works.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's something that I think that happens to me every single THAC, practically, is that I only come up with the title after I've already uploaded the film. But this is, I noticed in this, there's that sort of a point where the symbols come up on the screen, the three faces. And it's like, well, that was impressive because, you got those sort of like illustrated faces, the Lego, the mask, and the head and stuff. But it's like, oh, this is a nice title card screen, but then no title comes up.
Right. Yeah, I had other, I needed that break in there just for the pacing of the film. And I had other plans with those icons, but it didn't come through. So,
but it always impresses me when people actually have like nice looking title cards and credits, like if the credits have a good looking font and stuff, because like whenever I do THAC, it's always last second just slap the most bare bones credit on at the end with this default font. So when I saw that like almost title card come up and it has those nice illustrated heads, I was like, whoa, that's fancy as well. Everything's fancy.
Yeah, those were more necessary for me as like a break when I wanted to take a break from doing stuff like animation or set building or anything. I kind of just sat down and started making those graphics because I'm a graphic designer as well, so I was like, I want to put something in there.
I was just gonna like ask then, really just out of interest because of like where your kind of background is in terms of like what you've done prior to brick filming, because as you said that you're like you're working in like media and doing graphic design, and there's clearly a lot of like understanding of how to make something visually compelling, and also the cinematography and visual storytelling. I'm just the animation as well is really good, so I'm just interested in hearing like what you were doing prior to brick filming.
Prior to brick filming. Yeah. So prior to brick filming would be when I was like 7. I actually, I started brick filming probably 2007 or 8. Everyone get your World of Brick Films podcast bingo cards out, because it was the Lego Star Wars movie making contest that got me into brick filming. I know that's quite a common thing.
We can never escape
right.
2007.
That's
right.
The thing,
yeah, 2007 seems to be like the year.
It's always it's either going to be Blunty or Lego Star Wars contest, like depending on what people were paying attention to at the time.
Yeah, there was that, and there was one other film I have never been able to find. It was some like obscure Johnny Thunder sort of, I don't even think it was a full film. It was probably just 10-15 seconds of him running away from a boulder. But it was
the Lego Studios one, Jewel Quest.
It might have been. Actually, yeah, I'll need to look that up because I haven't been able to see it. But yeah, it was like that, and then the Star Wars one, specifically The Average Day at the Death Star. That's still one of my favorite Brickfilms of all time.
That's another
I know
classic
it's been talked about a lot on the
2007
podcast.
touchstone.
Yeah. So yeah, there wasn't really like a time before brick filming for me, at least in my movie making sort of career. So yeah, I did that growing up with my older brother. We used like a Sony camcorder, and we just took really short video clips. So it wasn't even
Classic.
like traditional stop motion. And unfortunately, I don't have any of those tapes. But then I moved on to my little point and shoot. I think I got one for Christmas around then. And again, no editing software or anything. I would just cycle through the photos really quickly to watch my films. So that was kind of the start. I did have like a large hiatus, though, between probably 2010 and 2014, I think, or 2013. I actually grew up in China. My parents' work moved them there. And so my access to internet was very different from most people, which is probably the only reason I wasn't on Bricks in Motion at that time.
I was going to ask, because I do find it very interesting if those people who've actually been brick filming for that long in the YouTube internet age. I mean, and I'm always thinking like, well, if you were brick filming and if you were watching stuff online, where were you? Why weren't you here?
In 2010 or 2007, I was in the States. And so I kind of saw a couple of YouTube videos or, a couple of those brick films online. But I really didn't care, I guess. I don't know. It was kind of like, oh, you can do that. And then I started doing it, and it was a lot of fun. But I kind of just, lived in my own little world of brick filming. And even up through, 2016, probably, like, the only people that saw my films were my family and friends, and the only brick films I saw was the occasional one that someone would show me, really, because I really like, you can't really get anywhere online in China without a VPN. So I didn't have a lot of exposure to the whole brick filming scene, which I now understand is quite massive, even from 2007. I kind of started back up right before the Lego movie came out. I remember that with Lego released some app. I actually just found it again. It was like their movie making app. And so that allowed me to download that onto my iPod Touch. And then I had, an editor with iMovie on there and everything. So I could actually add, voices and sound effects and create actual films. And I still do have a lot of those films. I don't know, no one online has seen them. So.
Yeah, I did see recently the Discord you were considering the possibility of.
I was like, should I upload these? Like, since I wasn't online, they have really no online history. So I don't think anyone would really care about them because they're not good. They're bad. And so it's like.
Don't worry, I care.
Yeah, you care. Maybe I'll send them all over to you.
I'll need them for the eventual wiki page.
There you go. Yeah, maybe I'll once I get big enough to have a wiki page, I'll release them and people will care a little bit more. But so that was kind of one outlet for my filmmaking passions. The other was, just I had a flip video camera. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but I would kind of go around and film my friends, and we'd make spy movies and adventure movies and Star Wars movies and all sorts of things. So I had a few different outlets for that. Then we moved back to the States. I went to university, and I didn't study film. I'm not a film student. But I studied communications kind of more broadly, and did a little bit of video work there. And I knew my senior year, this is 2021 is when I graduated. So that year I was like, okay, I'm going to get back into brick filming once I graduate. I'll have the time. It's been something I've been itching to do for the last 4 years. So I started to, do some research basically on what the whole scene was. I watched a lot of brick films. Most of the brick films I've seen were in my last year of college. And then I found Bricks in Motion. So I created an account there, which is why I think it says that I joined in 2021 in like the spring or something. but yeah, I wasn't active. I created the account because I was like, okay, I want to do stuff with these people. Like, this looks like a good place to, talk about this and grow in my skills and stuff. So there was that. I created a logo and a brand because, I guess it's my communications background, but I'm like, yeah, if you want to like have some kind of online presence, you need a strong brand. You can't change your name or your logo or anything. So I was like, I want to kind of create a brand that I can start releasing stuff under, which I'd never had before. So I kind of chose mine after my first Lego set, one of the Orient Expedition sets in 2003. So
I remember those fondly.
Oh yeah, that was the fantastic theme. I wish they had made a throwback set for the 90th anniversary, but sadly I was alone. But
there's a lot of love for Johnny Thunder still. I mean, less focused on the Orient Expedition sets, but yeah, I mean, I think pretty much every contest playlist we get, there's a couple of Johnny Thunder films and adventures.
Yeah, I almost feel like I can't make one of those now because there have been so many people like Joko who have done such amazing, films in that like I'd feel like I'm just ripping them off at this point. So
I mean, that goes back. Like there's been so many.
Oh yeah.
Back to the 90s. Like,
nobody owns that. Yeah.
I think there probably was a point in time where I probably wanted to do something like that, because I was at one point like really inspired by. I really wanted to make films like The Mummy, like Brendan Fraser one, and I kind of like the idea of doing something of that kind of tone and vibe. So who knows? Maybe one day I will.
We don't get tired of seeing Johnny Thunder films because I think everyone just has that sort of nostalgia for the theme. Like it always feels very nice to see classic Lego themes represented in contest playlists, or even in your own THAC entry. It's like, oh, look at the Islander big red mask thing. Like
I've got a long list of themes I want to bring into my films, and Islanders was on that list. And so I was glad to finally check that box. And my list is long enough where I don't need to do Johnny Thunder for a while. So
yeah. I mean, yeah, it is true that there are some nice other ones.
I mean, we also had a Rock Raiders one as well, which came 15th.
Oh yeah, there was a Rock Raiders one this year.
Yeah. Oh, I love that one. I'm glad that placed.
Yeah, Rock Raiders seems like a sort of underdog theme that it doesn't get mentioned all that often, but there's a couple of extremely
there's some diehard
big
fans
out there. Yeah, some diehards.
I don't think I ever. Yeah,
because there's like Power Miners, which are like they're probably the more popular ones.
Rock Raiders was slightly before my time, so I don't really have. I mean, the only real nostalgia I'd have is like I played all the Lego video games, like even including the ones that were older than me and stuff. So like yeah, older than my time. I mean, so like that's where I sort of would have seen themes like Rock Raiders, I guess.
I just got all the characters from Lego Island 2. Because that was one of my like formative childhood games growing up.
Same, yeah.
So I need to make something out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of us who sort of consider Lego Island 1 to be sort of, I'm not sure how to explain. Like there's something magical about it.
I never played the first one, unfortunately.
Yeah, like literally the same.
That's a shame. I mean, to hear that people didn't actually play Lego Island 1 when they were kids, that's a shame, because you probably have to play it when you're actually a kid to really have that connection. But like there's something about the tone of that game, and I think I've really only sort of started consciously thinking about this in more recent years, but like it's perfect. Like it's the ideal as far as I'm concerned for Lego. Like I'd love to make a brick film that's inspired by the tone of Lego Island. And you see people like Chris Elias's Mini Life TV, leaning into that, the same sort of thing. He was doing tests with like the audio from Lego Island, and like the movement is, reminiscent of Lego Island.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I'd love to do something where like, the palm trees are just wildly spinning around in the background for no good reason.
Was that like a glitch, or was that a mechanic?
No, that's all intentional. Like there's this.
Okay.
The flowers just spin around just because it looks funny.
Yes.
Or like, you click on somebody and then their hat like flies off their head and just changes into a different hat and lands back down on their head.
I always liked driving the cars, and you could change the color of them, and they'd kind of disassemble, but you'd still stay kind of seated in midair.
Oh yeah, in the air.
And then
Yeah,
it would reassemble in a different color.
I always used to like, as a kid, I just like throw pizzas at people. I like that you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then like they just continue waving at you. Yeah, that's fun times.
But yeah, yeah. We could be here all day reminiscing. Well, I mean, especially if I had somebody else who had the same sort of connection to Lego Island 1, then it's like, you know, we'd easily be here all day saying like, yeah, Lego Island 1, that was the best game ever. It's practically a cliche at this stage. Although luckily, I think that, you know, sometimes it feels like people, I won't name anything in particular, but sometimes it feels like people who get attached to some old Lego property, I don't know, they get really weird about it. Like really defensive, or like demanding that it gets brought back, and it's just kind of like, let it go.
Yeah, they had their time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, you can revive them in new ways through cameos and other videos. But
I like to think that the people who like Lego Island 1 recognize that Lego Island 1 could only have existed in that sort of mid to late 90s PC time period. Like, it would be pointless to just say, let's bring it back. Let's do, you know, Lego Island in a new Lego Island in 2023.
Yeah. It wouldn't be the same.
You know, everything is like a product of its time, and like there's so much context of the time it comes out and what's going on at the time. They're like, it wouldn't be the same thing. Like, you might as well just invent new stuff instead.
Yeah, I mean, it would be basically the same as like, you know, bringing back an old sitcom after like, you know, 30 years or something. Like, it's not going to be the same thing, is it? You know.
Right.
It's like, well, the example I often think about, because I made the Lego Studios history video, is that oftentimes on the Lego Studios video, I get comments where people say that, oh, Lego should revive Lego Studios, you know, do Lego Studios 2 now. And I always think, like, you know, Lego Studios, it was a thing in the year 2000 for a reason. Well, for multiple reasons. You know, like the context of where computers and the internet were at the time is just so different to today that you couldn't just, you know, pluck it out of 2000 and drop it into 2023 and expect it to be the same thing.
Yeah, it wouldn't go over well. There are so many better ways you can make, you know, brick films than and it would either be wildly expensive or subpar, and people would be upset, you know.
Yeah, but
the best they
also
could have done was make an app.
It just wouldn't have that impact. Like, it wouldn't it wouldn't mean the same sort of things, because everyone already has seen brick films nowadays, and everyone has phones that are, you know, you can just get apps and, you know, start making brick films. Like, when Lego Studios came out, it was this sort of like, you know, again, sort of magical, like, whoa, they've made it so that we can just make stuff ourselves. But yeah, it wouldn't have that magic nowadays because people can already do that.
Right.
I was just thinking then of just to, not to go back into Lego Island, but there was I think it was the other day, Chihuahua put up a post of, it was a link to the cutscene from Lego Island 2 with set to In the End by Linkin Park. And I when I saw it, I was like, oh my god, this is like one of the first videos I ever saw on YouTube. I was like, this is bringing back some memories.
And those early Lego games were top notch.
Yeah.
Stunt Rally. Yeah, there's so many good ones.
I mean, Lego Racers, of course.
Yeah, Lego Racers too.
I had the chess game actually from the
chess
game.
It's
like one of the very earliest ones.
One of the, yeah, I haven't played that one. There's a few I haven't played, I guess.
Bionicle game that I was really into for a while too.
There was one on the browser that I played a lot way back.
Oh, dude, the browser games are a whole different story. When I was living in the States before moving, yeah, I would spend so much time on like the Orient Expedition games, and man, there's just so many good ones.
Suddenly I'm remembering the Orient Expedition games now.
Yeah, I actually downloaded I downloaded all the sound files for all the sound effects they used in that. So eventually I'm going to bring those back in a video.
I like that idea a lot.
They're so iconic. Yeah, I'm really big into like sound cues, because I'll update all the visuals and stuff and do do things. But if I can bring back some of the magic with like some of the sound files.
I love sort of self-imposed kind of restrictions, like, you know, liking the idea of using the sound effects from something like that. Which it's something I did in Taco Trouble 2. The original Taco Trouble used sound effects from a CD, you know, like a sound effects library CD, but the same source was used for Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. So a whole bunch of the sounds in the original film, people recognized them from Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. And so when I was making the second one, I decided I'll bring back that source, but when I'm pulling from that source, I'll only use the ones that are also in Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. Just because I liked that idea. And it's something that like nobody will ever pick up on, but for some reason in my own mind, I just like to... There's something fun about working within a restriction like that.
Yeah, and that's part of the fun of THAC too, is like the restriction is your time. And so it's kind of like, well, anything goes for this next 24 hours. Let's see what we can make happen. Since you mentioned it too, I do have to say, when I was watching like every brick film in existence in 2021, there were two videos that kind of stood out to me as like, oh, this is what brick filming can be now. Like, it was Taco Trouble 2. I just thought the whole script was just absolutely perfect, and I previously had never seen... I don't even know how to describe... Like, the animation was so fluid. I know that's not everything, but it was new to me at the time. And just the lighting was very good and very natural and motivated, which, man, I have some brick filming... I have some brick filming soapboxes. One of them is motivated lighting.
Oh, yeah. That's one.
But yeah, Taco Trouble 2 was hilarious. I think I sent it to everyone I knew. I was just like, you have to see, this is hilarious. And then Forlorn Creatures janitor video. That one is fantastic. It's so good.
That was a landmark at the time, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah, so...
But yeah, I know what you mean about the motivated lighting, and like, I get really judgmental. Again, this is it's only something that I, you know, started to learn about and notice in like after, you know, being around for years and years and years in brick filming. But nowadays, like, sometimes I see a thumbnail on YouTube of like a trailer recreation, and there's a side by side where like there's a frame from the original trailer and then a frame from the brick film version, and like I'm just judging just from the thumbnail. I'm like, you know, I can see that you have flat, even lighting in your recreation, even though in the original frame it's all coming from one side. Like there's a motivated source, like a window or something. And like I've written it off just from the thumbnail.
Yeah, it's a little. Yeah, cinematography is probably the thing I enjoy the most. So that includes, you know, the lighting, but also the shot composition. And it's something I take pretty seriously, because I think if you have something that's attractive to look at, then people will give it a chance. Obviously, I still think the story is probably the most important part of the film, but you know, you got to get people be invested in your story, and if you know, they see a thumbnail and it doesn't look good, they're not gonna click on it.
Yeah, I mean, that was always my thinking. I mean, I know I talk about this film all the time, but like, yeah, part of my thinking with it was like it's such a niche project that like barely anyone has the same level of fandom for this as I do. But I was just thinking, if I make it look good enough, I bet I can draw people in and then get them invested.
Yeah, you certainly got me with that.
That's the thing as well. I think like we've definitely seen, I think arguably more of a shift of, I think, in the last like couple of years, of just like break filmers who are really just pushing the, you know, cinematography side of things. Like obviously that's been a thing for years. You can go back to brickfilms.com, whatever. But I think that like we are seeing more and more people really focusing on the cinematography. And that's like really, I don't know, it's really interesting to see. I think people are really kind of realizing like, yeah, like the importance of like stuff like motivated lighting and just like, I don't know, the fact that you can make something look really cinematic and sort of shot basically in a way that you would consider shooting in a live action project, you know.
I mean, I guess we probably give a lot of mixed messages in talking about the things that we sort of look for, but, you know, because we're always saying like, oh, really, at the end of the day, story is most important, sort of things like that. But like, really, cinematography sort of is movie making.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Movie making, you have to use it. You have to use the medium, whether you're painting or, creating a graphic or a video or a piece of music. You have to use the medium to its full potential. The thing with filmmaking is it's an audio and visual medium. And so if you neglect one or the other, it's not going to turn out very well. It could be like really nice to look at, but there's not much in terms of, music or dialogue driving interest or adding that element to it. Same way with the visuals though. Like you can have a good story, you can have great, sound effects or music. But if it doesn't use the visual medium to tell the story, in shot composition, in lighting, to give you mood, like it's not going to turn out as well as if you were to use that to its full potential.
Yeah. And especially going through the contest playlist, like it always stands out to me when, you see like literally the first shot in someone's entry. Well, of course your one, but also like Suited Ninja Nerds one or Jacob Crow's one. You see literally the first shot and you're like, okay, this is somebody who's thinking about it. Like there's brains going into this, like as far as how they're making it. So I'm paying attention. I'm in.
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons I got back into brick filming too. Is just like I was like, you can make really beautiful frames with Lego, and there's not enough of it that exists out there. So yeah. I want to at the very least put more out there, but maybe hopefully inspire other people to put similar content out there too, because I'm passionate for brick films and I want there to be good stuff that exists out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a very similar goal in mind, sort of making a switch over to in making Taco Trouble 2. I was very inspired by, well, yeah, the two things I always mention are the cleaners and Beyond the 11th Dimension. And so yeah, I would like to think that I could be a step along the way and helping to influence more people into making nice visuals and nice images, and lighting and sets and everything.
Yeah, set design is actually a really important piece to that too. Right?
And yeah, yours was incredible for this THAC entry.
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, I try to get kind of that mock quality in most things that I make.
And I think, did you mention that you actually did build these within the 24 hours?
Yeah, so it was so to that backstory, like people were always asking in the Discord and stuff, like, how can I prepare? Can I build sets and all that? And it's like, yeah, but it's a little discouraged. Working on this, I was working on a client project and they sent over a green screen to me. And so I was like, oh, cool, I can use this in THAC. And so my immediate thought went to, what's the easiest way to get, much more scale out of something with not much effort? And that's, doing a space video. You can film a ship on a green screen and then boom, all of a sudden you have this massive world and you didn't do that much work. So I was like, cool, this will be perfect. I want to do a space film. When I was telling, my friends who were going to help me out with this, like about the competitions, I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to do a space film, but I'm not, positive. I don't want to cram it into the theme. But then the theme was announced and all of a sudden that went out the window. I was like, oh yeah, I have this other idea now. And the day before I had seen this Instagram post. I wish I could tell you who it was by, but it was this really cool, like jungle monastery looking thing. And that immediately came to mind. And so as I was kind of crafting the story, I was like, oh, that's what I want to make. So I made a smaller version, but I made that. And I was like, well, this means now I have to make a jungle. And fortunately, I had been playing around with different tree designs earlier. So I kind of knew the direction I wanted to go with. And so I built like 6 identical tree trunks that I could kind of swap around in the frame depending on the angle.
That's a good idea.
And so really, it was just kind of a textured floor and a bunch of trees and foliage that I would plop around. So it looks a lot more complicated than it actually is. The most complicated part was the building, which I had good inspiration from. So it took me, probably the total building time was 4 or 5 hours maybe.
That's crazy. It would take me so much longer to
Yeah.
do half of this.
Yeah, I'm pretty experienced builder though, so that's good.
Yeah. I mean, you must be an experienced builder with nicely sorted Lego. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I should send you a picture that you can put up because it's quite detailed.
I was just gonna say then, like with the, yeah, saying taking like 4 hours on all that. Like sometimes it takes me like 4 hours just to get the lighting right. Like, oh yeah, this looks good now, or like just get the shots, like work out why a shot isn't working for me, and so yeah, the fact you did all that like that, man, that's just you can see that experience.
I kind of feel like in seeing this for the first time, I was thinking like, oh man, the sets look great, but obviously they were built beforehand. So like, I can't, I can't give it too much consideration for like the judging or whatever. And it's like, but so I was just thinking, well, it's still it's great as a film, so it's still obviously the winner. But then to actually learn that the sets were actually built within the time as well is even more impressive.
Yeah,
it was quite the grind there. I had to disassemble. Man, that was one of the most stressful parts too. Was there came a point where I ran out of green plates and I needed to destroy half of the set to move it over to the other one, because I kind of had, it was kind of one set but kind of two, and so I had to bring some of those plates over, and so I had to make sure I had everything filmed on that one. And there's that moment when you rip apart your set that you're like, I sure hope there's nothing else I needed there. Same thing with like cutting the minifig in half. Like I couldn't cut the real one in half because I still needed shots with him, which like if you look back at it slowly, it changes to a completely different figure, which I don't love, but I had to do it. It was one of the sacrifices that had to be made.
Yeah, you do just have to accept things like that. You obviously can't wait around for a bricklink order of the same head, the second one. Yeah. But that's certainly, it sounds like a very good idea to do like a forest where you can just sort of reuse tree trunks and stuff so that you can get like multiple angles, like
Yeah.
Rather than if you have just a wall, like if the wall is a certain building, it's always going to be in that one place. You can't just have the same wall behind everyone, no matter what the angle is.
Right. Yeah, I had those like 6 tree trunks, and then I built a couple cliff faces too that I would move to the very back.
Yeah, because I did something kind of similar to that with the tracker tracks. Like I kind of had made like I came up with a system where basically it's like these squares, and I kind of just move these squares around. So it's like I've got like 2 trees on one square, and then I've got 1 tree on another, and I just like I just lay them out for each shot. I've just changed the layout of it so it looked like there was this big kind of like expansive forest when actually it's like this tiny set. So I'm guessing like it kind of is a similar thing to that, but you just sort of have like sections of a set where you would just swap around or
right. Yeah, that's that's good. You gotta have the ability to swap things around and still have it make sense. It's a big time saver.
Yeah, but like I mean, it's super impressive how it really feels like a big world. In all the shots, it does. You can't just see the seams. You can't see where it runs out. It feels like an actual.
That's good
world.
to hear. I'm glad. I had like a paper backdrop in the very very back.
And, that looks really well. That looks really well though, because I think like you've carefully considered things like the depth of field and like where like you're not just blowing out the background for no reason. There's like actual purpose to it, and it looks like there is an actual depth to it, because you can see like there's like this shot like around like I'd say a 107, where you can see the sort of paper backgrounds there, and like the area so like directly around him is like it's in focus, and then the area sort of beyond that is there's like the depth of field is kind of what's shallower. So it's really kind of well constructed and thought out.
Thank you. Yeah,
I actually wanted to talk a little bit about the sound design as well, with not necessarily just with Unwavering Dedication, but I did feel we watched earlier Echoes of a Humdrum Existence, your Brawl 22 entry, and what I found with that is just like I was really just like impressed by just how much because you had original music for that as well. The way that the the sound design, it kind of it sort of it goes with the music, and it kind of like the beats go with it, and it's just this really kind of kind of like constructed kind of sound design with music, like kind of composition. That I found like just really 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 well done.
Yeah, thanks. That was actually an intentional decision from like the first minute of the idea. Before I even knew what the story was, I was like, all right, I want to make a very rhythmic sort of video, with the theme being repeat and all that. So if I have kind of the sound effects and actions match like on beat with the music, I think that'll tie everything in really nicely and kind of be a separate sort of callback to the theme. And so I called my brother and I was like, hey, I got this idea, like to match sound effects kind of with that, really kind of high level. And so we went even as deep as like, all right, well, the BPM needs to match the frame rate. So we'll do it at 12 and 120 BPM. And yeah, it just worked out really well. Micah, he actually did most of the sound design for that too. So he did all the sound design for this video as well. Which was a blessing because I was originally going to do it, and he called me. He's like, so I'm done with the music. Do you need me to do anything else? I have time. And then he's like, I can do the sound design. And I was like, yes,
that's a blessing.
Please do.
That's always what I dread the most is having to cram sound effects in the
just
last few
searching
hours.
through libraries of sound effects takes forever.
It's the worst.
Yeah, I almost in preparation I almost went through and tried to find a bunch of sound, like just footsteps and stuff that I would use later, but I never got around to it. So but yeah, Echoes of a Humdrum Existence, that was I think a decision that really helped the theme there. That was a fun video to work on too.
I feel like with I guess 100 Existence, we probably did talk about this in the Brawl 2022 kind of special, but I just kind of want to say that like obviously it wasn't the only entry that year that had the kind of the day repeating kind of thing, but just the way in which you really understood how to kind of tell a story like that, I think through I think the sound design was a big part of it, the editing. Like the way that there's this kind of progression, even if it's using the same shots, it's like there really feels like it's going somewhere. And
yeah, I actually have something to say about that too.
Yeah.
I rarely in that video reused a shot. I reshot the same things most of the time. If you go back and look, like when he wakes up, that's 5 different takes of the same thing. And each time I switch out one of his furniture pieces from a colored one to a gray version, to kind of like his world is getting more and more drab as things kind of echo on. I'm kind of sad nobody picked up on that.
I was going to say, like, I hate to say it, but people
might have
are
been
always going to assume it's repeated footage.
I know. It was a little sad because I was like, I spent way longer than I needed to reshooting the same shots, and no one really caught on. At least no one said anything about it. So I was like, maybe in the future for competitions I leave that part out and I just reuse footage.
It's because we've all made Brickfilms ourselves, and we've all made stuff where it repeats shots at some points. Like, as soon as you see something that looks pretty much the same, you're instantly going to assume that they've reused it, especially if it's in a timed contest.
For the keen eye, though.
Though actually,
there were a couple that picked it up.
I'm noticing now that that detail it's where you kind of go from like, when he's going to bed, like you'll see like there's like this yellow chair. He wakes up and it's a grey chair, and then the red lamp turns into a grey lamp the following day.
The red lamp, the blue alarm clock, and even the he's got some like propaganda tracks on his wall, and those change into grey little squares too.
Well, of course, now that we have you here, we just have to say once again, like, we just love those probe lens shots.
Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah. I'm learning more and more how to use that. That was my first project I used that on. It's got a weird thing with the coloring. It kind of it tints it into a warm sort of tone. So trying to correct for that is a little difficult, but it definitely worked in the microwave.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with a macro lens where every shot came out looking yellow and sort of hazy, and I had to do a lot of correction. But
I gotta figure out the science on that.
Yeah, I mean, usually I would just copy the details of one shot and paste it onto the next shot with the same lens, and it would basically clear it all up again. Like, I wouldn't have to do much tweaking of each individual shot once I had one of them done. But certainly with the probe lens, like, there's shots in both the raw entry and the THAC entry where they feel like shots from real films that we just can't achieve with webcams or DSLRs usually.
Yeah, it just gets right in there, and it focuses all the way up until it, like, you can have a minifigure like touching the lens and it'll still focus.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. Like, you can have a face fill the entire screen.
I mean, usually, minimal focal distance is like the killer for shooting Lego. Yeah.
Yeah, the only real limiter for that is getting light in between the lens and whatever you're filming. That's the limiter for me now.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's easily the number one thing that I want the most. As far as taking my films
find a
to the
good
next
deal
level.
online. I found a really good deal on eBay. Couldn't pass it up.
Yeah, I must keep an eye out, because I should start looking more often than I do, just in case. Although certainly you're probably at an advantage if you're in America.
Yeah, I would say so. We're pretty spoiled over here in terms of our resources.
I'd be waiting for a good deal to appear in Ireland, and don't know how long that's going to take.
Yeah. People always say, like, good gear is not necessary for creating a good thing, and I agree. Like, I get the sentiment behind that, but it does help. It does make things a lot easier. Having good lights, having good.
It just opens up more doors. There's more things in your arsenal to making something.
Right. Which, like, you kind of have to go through doing it the janky way first, so that you can appreciate and understand kind of what you're getting as a bonus with good stuff.
It is true that you need to understand how and when to use it. It has to be motivated.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you feel about this, but like in recent years, I've kind of started to go a bit against that sentiment, which I feel like to some degree is maybe quite helpful, but it's not always entirely. Is the thing of like, oh, you want to start filmmaking? Just get your phone and you can film on your phone. It's like, yeah, that's like, you can start that way, but it's not like you telling you everything, like.
Yeah, you start on your phone until people roast you for the handheld jittery image and the poor quality.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we do bring up examples like, Forest Fire's Mandalorian video that was done with the webcam. So, we point to things like, oh, look, you can make this with a webcam. If you don't, if that's what you have, you could do it in theory. But there's so much more going into things like that. Other tech, other lighting.
Especially the lighting. Like,
editing.
I would say if anyone wants to spend money on gear for brick filming, please buy good lights.
Upgrade
like,
your
that
lights,
is... No matter what camera you have, no matter what stop motion program you have, like, buy good lights. Buy lights that can change colors. Buy lights that you can adjust color temperature. Ones that work for your scene. I like, there's the Aperture MC, which is like about the size of a credit card. It comes with its own little diffusion thing. It's fairly affordable. It's full RGB, like full color temperature scale, and it's all app controlled and battery powered. So that's what I have been using for the past year and a half, and they've been absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that it took me far too long to get into actually buying some good lighting equipment, rather than just being stuck in the old ways of just point a light, and if you can see things, then you're good to go.
Right.
That's like
lighting is what takes me the most time. I can spend 3-4 hours just lighting one shot.
Yeah, and it is true. Like, once you learn about stuff like different color temperatures, and then you're thinking like, is this shot supposed to be lit by natural light or artificial light?
Right,
and you have to make it look different for what you want. Yeah,
and then people often think they have to keep the lighting the same for every shot, but I think people forget that, like, you want a light for general consistency, but it doesn't have to be exactly the same in every shot.
That's right. Yeah, it has to look generally like the same place, but certainly
Mm-hmm.
I tweak every individual shot for the sake of the individual shot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even like the temperature, like to a certain degree, is going to change, isn't it? Like for where you are within the set or location or whatever. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
lighting is something which I feel like I definitely improved on, but I definitely feel like I could definitely work on more. Just sometimes I've
It's
really
not just
struggled.
working on it. Like you know, like you could buy more types of lights. Like ever since I got the softbox lights, I feel like, you know,
Mm.
my stuff looks nicer.
Mm.
So yeah, that is kind of like I just bought something and just instantly it looks better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would encourage people to pay attention to, when they set up their lights and they think they're done, spend an extra 10 minutes looking over the image. Like, are the shadows really harsh? Like, is there a better way to motivate your light through a window, or is there a lamp in your scene? Stuff like that can really make all the difference.
And of course, thinking about
in the
like
final image.
you know, bounces, like bouncing.
Yeah,
light.
bounces too. Like, if you're not using bounce cards in your stuff, you probably should be. Like, to use bounce cards or some foil to kind of bend the light to your will. Like, yeah, there's just a whole world of customization out there that makes all the difference. I have kind of a list of shots that I like. They have no stories with them, and so I uploaded them as like a animation reel. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's kind of just a bunch of different like interesting lighting scenarios, and that gave me a lot of practice to do all those shots. So
I was gonna ask, like, I was gonna say, like, there's certain shots in that wheel which I just I don't recognize the film.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's a lot of that. I wish I had released, and some of those I have like 90% complete film.
Oh,
Like
wow.
there's
Okay.
that wizard video is pretty much done. I just never released it.
I was actually gonna ask as well. What's up with Room 1174?
Oh yeah, I figured someone would ask me about that. That was a Brickfilm Day project. I was gonna release it on Brickfilm Day, and I had something come up in my life, and I couldn't devote all the time to finishing it, and then it didn't come out. And since I didn't have that motivation anymore, it kind of just died. So I wouldn't expect that film to come out anytime soon or at all.
Well, Brickfilm Day will come up again before too long.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that again. But I'd have to like rebuild a set, and I kind of know where the story's going. It was almost done. I just needed one more scene really, and
But I would love
Yeah.
to see some of those clips from the reel as part of actual films, if you have.
yeah, I should definitely go back and finish some of those. But I have a fairly short attention span when it comes to
Mhm.
projects, which I know I need to grow in. Like
Mhm.
it's not an excuse.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes I do get a feeling of once I've achieved the shot that I wanted to shoot, then I kind of stop caring. It's like, well, yeah, I set out to do it and I did it, so I don't need to care anymore.
Right.
Who cares if I release an
Yeah.
actual film now? But then I have to just power through and actually finish a film.
Mm-hmm. I'm in the stage right now where I'm kind of like, I've had 3 years of thinking about making the film. I've got 20 seconds of it actually made, and now I'm like, now I've got like, I'm about 1% there.
Hmm.
Yeah,
But yeah, no.
it can get depressing to think like, how long will this take at this rate? But I feel like these things do come and go in waves where, at some point you'll probably pick it up and get like a great percentage done in a really, really short amount of time compared to how it's been going. And then, you might have
Right.
a lull in motivation or interest, and then it'll come back again.
Yeah,
Dude,
it's
I will
kind of
never
like,
understand how that guy made Paired. That is just absolutely insane to me. Like, I like his behind the scenes like documentary. Like the film is great, but I like that behind the scenes even more because it's so inspirational. Like the fact that he spent like what was it, like 8 years
yeah.
on the same film and working through all of the like, well, the story I wrote when I was
12.
young, and it's not great, but I'm still gonna finish it. It's like, wow, that's some real dedication there.
Yeah, really, we have to talk to that guy. I know Twisted Bricks did a podcast with him, but yeah, it would be interesting to talk because yeah, that film has really grown massively in like cultural awareness.
Yeah, I'm glad it got a lot of attention. It definitely deserves it.
Well, especially as well because like I remember, like people sharing like parts of Paired before, and like they just didn't really have views. Like they just like I think like I think like part 10 I'm pretty sure had like 130 views or something like for like a really long time, and then suddenly the feature film comes out and it's like now on to 1.7 million, so not bad.
He pulled it off in the end, but I always was wondering to myself, like, why doesn't this guy like share these in the community? Yeah, because it was always just some other person would come along and say like, hey, has anyone seen this? And then we'd be like, whoa, this is interesting, like we've never heard of this before. So yeah, I guess, well, certainly you make for a nice example where like you were active before being around in the community, but now you have like plugged in with the community and started entering contests and stuff, and you're getting recognition for that.
Yeah, it's good to just interact with people who are doing the same kind of things, and getting feedback and giving feedback.
And like get the film in front of people's eyes, and it sort of spreads around to other people, and it might even open up opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. I did a little experiment a while ago, I think last year, where I was like, okay, I've seen enough Brickfilms to know what gets the views. So I made like a recreation of a scene from one of the Star Wars shows, and almost instantly it got 51,000 views. It's kind of sad that that's my most viewed video, but I was like, all right, confirmed. I know what gets the views. It's not stuff I really care to make, but so it's nice to have kind of a community to share the stuff I'm actually proud of, and get some eyes in front of that.
I mean, I gotta say, I didn't even notice that video has 51,000 views, like compared to it's so much more than all your other ones. Like obviously I watched every video in preparation for this podcast, and like I wasn't looking at the view counts. So yeah, it is kind of funny that like we're just here talking about like, oh yeah, the brawl entry, that's great, and the THAC entry, that's great, and the animation reel, there's so much impressive stuff in that, but it's like it never crossed my mind.
Meme.
Yeah, it never crossed my mind to be like, oh yeah, this 26-second Star Wars video, that has 51,000 views. You must be so proud. That must be your best video.
And I love Star Wars too, and I'd love to make a Star Wars video, but I just got other stuff I'd rather do, more original stories.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering if we should start talking about the THAC top 10, because we kind of have to switch over. With more time left when we have an entire top 10 to talk about.
That is actually good. Kind of good sort of like remind me of that. But yeah, no, it's. I guess we might as well start off. And yeah, as usual, we're going to just do the top 10, and I guess maybe before we get to the top 10, we could maybe talk about like, some of the other entries.
Honorable mentions quickly.
Yeah. So I guess I'll kind of start and say that I really enjoyed Epos. I was glad to see it get to 12th place. That was a really good one.
I loved that one.
And really kind of memorable. And I think like you were saying, I think when we, the actual THAC announcement, Sean,
the
that like
stream,
it was hard to know what, how, everyone would think of it. Yeah. But we all kind of unanimously kind of felt like it is, it should score high.
Memorable and fun entry, yeah. And yeah, I mean, okay, I guess that's 12th, and I was going to mention the one that's in 11th, which is Dinner with Clarence, which is one of my personal favourites. And again, it sort of strikes that particular like brick filmy tone that I like a lot, where it's like it's just kind of funny and goofy on purpose. And of course, I just love how like, once the punchline hits at the end, it just ends.
Yeah, very good comedic timing.
Yeah,
there.
the timing's nice.
And it really put you in the scene too. I liked the set of that one too.
Yeah, the shots do look good.
Yeah, there's something about like the line delivery. I really love that line where he says like, "Such wise words from a creature who once tried to eat us." There's something about that line. I think it's really funny.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like it kind of, yeah, like you were saying then, it was like the way it kind of it just ends once you get to the punchline. It's like it kind of reminds me of that kind of like, like almost like the cutting in the middle of a scream or an explosion kind of thing. It's like
Yeah.
cuts.
It's very modern. I feel like that's a style of humor that's going around right now.
But yeah, if you wanted to...
my honorable mention, I would like to mention A Piece of the Universe. This one was really simple, but I really liked it. Kind of just the guy floating around in space, collecting stuff, and I just love at the end when he like morphs it into his body, and he's just got that classic smile on his face. It's I don't know. There's just something really nice about it. I'm glad it placed.
Yeah, I did really like this one, and I mean, of course, it's sort of other ones that have more developed story. Like they just ended up floating higher and higher, But certainly, I really feel like this one has a very well thought out vibe to it, and yeah, like just all of that zero gravity animation, like so impressive for THAC.
Very impressive. I also like how it had the same Islander statue as the one I chose to use.
Yeah, we have to mention that. It's a
classic connection.
Remarkable coincidence to have the same Islander head.
There was an absolutely incredible edit in...
somebody made the THAC highlights
Full More
video.
Lens. Full More Lens did a highlights video.
That was a good transition.
It kind of go from your the head in your film and then to that. It was like that. Yeah, that was incredible. Shout out to Full More Lens for that.
And A Piece of the Universe, another one with original music, and like the original music really added to the overall vibe in this one.
Yeah, I like the definitive beat at the end, the kind of bois that kind of ends it out. It's nice.
But yeah, like I do. Oftentimes it comes up in THAC or Brawl, like somebody else has done something similar to your own film. Even if it's something like way out there, like this Islander head, and you're watching the playlist and you're like, I can't believe somebody else has that in their film.
Yeah. There's also as well, I think it's in Chazin's entry that he has the same. I know it's a very basic kind of like build, but the exact same grave build that is in your entry as well. I thought it was interesting.
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice that. That's true.
It is funny when you have those sort of coincidences.
But yeah, let's talk about the official top 10.
The official top 10, yeah. Starting off with Cannon Fodder by Angry Cat Brickfilms. And this one, it kind of reminded me a little bit of, I think it's called Day of the Sun. Is it the Brick film from
North
2013?
Korea Brick film by Nick Madret.
I really liked the kind of visual kind of humor of the animation, especially like the way that he uses like that kind of repeated frames thing of when he's on the loudspeaker and he's holding his head, just like the kind of like
I died laughing at that part. Yeah, when he's just holding his head and he's shouting through the megaphone.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, again, it has that great sort of...
It has a certain vibe to it.
Yeah, the vibe, the tone, the just sort of Lego-ness. Like, it's all, everything looks good, very well done with the Lego minifigures, specifically. It has that playfulness about it. Even in a sort of, war-based film.
Right, yeah. I'm always sort of jealous of this style animation. And like Sanjiro, too. Like, wild kind of out there animation. I'm like, oh, I would love to make stuff like this, but I know it's not in my style, and it would feel very off if I were to try.
Yeah,
because I know I wouldn't be able to do it.
for some reason, even this is the type of stuff that I gravitate towards style wise, that I like watching the most. But then when I make stuff myself, like I animate in a really different style most of the time, and like I'm trying for that more sort of fluid or realistic tone of the animation, but then. Yeah, it's weird. So like, I would like to make stuff like this, like with more just funny looking animation. That's more playful looking rather than just always defaulting to like just trying to make it look super fluid and realistic.
Yeah, it's It's very good. I loved this entry. It was very good. I liked the visual gags in it were really funny, like him holding his head and the horse kind of just like in the field, and then
Yeah.
the like missile silo opens up below it.
Oh yeah, and
That
it
was
just
good,
it just stays stuck on the plate. Yeah.
Yeah. And the people that like walk away at the end is really funny. The timing of that was just really good. I like how he kind of leaves a beat for you with the last person before he leaves. The timing was really good.
I guess the ending, it sort of felt like it just kind of ran out, like, you know, a tad anticlimactic, but it sort of felt like a THAC ending.
I love the mic sound too, when he just like buries his head in his arms and then the mic kind of just trails off.
Yeah. Oh, I love poses like that when like he has his head down and
Oh, yeah.
his two arms is just posed really like specifically. I love when people have like really specific poses and just hold on them. Yeah, it's nice.
I think as well, like it was a good use of like the classic kind of minifigures. They're always kind of just really funny. Like
Yeah.
the big moustache, smiley face.
Yeah, the mustache guys, they always just look funny.
The classic mustache.
Yeah. So that kind of goes. I think it definitely has a classic Lego vibe to it, which is I really like as well.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we should talk about 9th place Probation by Dara Toomey and Steve Collins.
Yeah, but back to
again.
once again into the top 10.
Yes.
Yeah, and also with a much longer brick film as well, so that's quite
Mm-hmm.
impressive.
Yeah, this year there were a lot of impressively long entries, and I mean, yeah, I feel like a broken record. So like we always say, like, oh, longer doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better, but like, yeah, there were a lot of impressive long ones, 3-minute entries that were quite good, which is like remarkable for THAC.
Yeah, that's actually worth pointing out as well. It's like that. Yeah, we had a lot of ones that were longer, but they were also like, you know, some of the best ones
Good.
as well. So
Yeah.
it's
The voice acting in this one was really good.
Yeah.
I just love how whoever the voice actors were, they gave it their all.
Yeah.
yeah, that's
I-
Dara Toomey and Steve Collins.
Yeah.
They really have
They have a lot of practice over the years.
Yeah,
Hmm.
like they've got they really work well as like a dynamic, and obviously they've continued collaborating even in the times where they weren't brick filming. They're actively doing a lot of stuff like on TikTok. They get like a ridiculous amount of views, and they do like a lot of live action sketches. And
I was saying, like, watching this film, it made me want to like write something with their voices in mind. Like, I'd love to have them voice act in something for me, and like, I mean, there's a lot of the times that happens when people like have been around for a while. They can sort of only show up for like THAC or Brawl. Only carve out some time to do a THAC entry. And it's like, I'd love to have the voices like this, but just give it loads of time in the animation. Like, to do the sort of animation you could never do in THAC, and like animate it to the voices for like, you emphasize all the individual words with the animation. It just looks so good.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the animation style in this one too. Like the arms on the keyboards. Like whenever people do that, it always gets me. That's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's this one spot where like they're talking and his head just spins all the way around, which it felt like at the same time out of place, but also like entirely fitting to what was going on.
It's funny because to me that kind of feels old school. Like, just have the head spin all the way around 360. I feel like that was a thing that people used to do a lot, or like that people kind of stopped doing. I mean, everyone always complained about the hands spinning around 360, thinking that just looks silly. But yeah, like the head spinning all the way around, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's something like just like inherently kind of like ridiculous about it that makes it really funny. Like, it's just not even trying to kind of. I guess the hands is like. But just something about the heads just like going 360 degrees is just really funny. But I do really like as well, like there's that bit when his boss is like screaming at him, and then he moves away and it cuts back and he's just like sitting normally, a normal pose.
Yeah, just back to normal. Yeah. without, where, yeah, you don't see him like rearranging himself to get back to normal. He just instantly cuts back there. Yeah, that's funny.
And I think that kind of face as well, the smile is.
Yeah, it's very well written too.
Yeah,
good dialogue.
I guess sometimes I practically feel like I don't have a lot to say, where it's just sort of like, yeah, it's good. Clearly, it's well written and voiced. It's funny and yeah, long.
Yes, we'll head over to 8th place. You Add Here by Former Lens, and Former Lens once again coming back with. It always seems to be kind of like around for like THAC and Paul and coming out with some high placing entries. Yeah, I really like this one a lot. It has I really like the kind of the concept behind it, where you've got this kind of character. He's trying to get this sort of simulated dream, and these like distractions going on in the way. And it kind of forms in part of the dream. And yeah, no, it's a really simple and quite a short entry, but one I this is really well executed and nicely told.
Yeah, definitely. Like the lighting in this was very, very good. I like the kind of nighttime alley vibes in the beginning, and then also the white void. Like a lot of people like doing white void stuff, and it's a lot more difficult to pull off than one might think. So that was done very well here too. And the shot composition and all that. I love all the little creatures too, with like the little pufferfish and the shrimp or I forget.
Yeah, are those like original builds, or are they from like some Ninjago City set or something?
No, I don't keep up with
No.
modern Ninjago, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have a pretty limited knowledge of modern Lego sets. But it all looks nice, so it's
Yeah.
It does, yeah.
And
It
the
kind of
lighting
fits
is
the
beautiful.
the look that he's going for, which, I mean, it kind of has a slight sort of Blade Runner vibe.
Yeah,
I
for
guess.
sure. Those early shots where it's like really busy, dense. It's funny. Like, obviously, it's actually a very small set in reality, but he makes it feel so much larger than it is. It feels to suggest that entire world with just that like one shot of the guy turns the corner, and like there's a couple of other guys standing there with so many colored lights, and yeah, it feels so busy and large, but it's actually there's not a hell of a lot really to it, and obviously it's good for THAC.
Nice use of the THAC logo as well.
Yeah, I really like that.
I always love to see the THAC logos being incorporated into the actual film. Yeah,
that was really well done.
Certainly, I do like the the sort of storytelling where he's like trying to get invested in like the natural world that he's like in the sort of constructed reality, but then he keeps getting distracted by like the big advertisements outside. It is sort of relatable as far as like I don't know. I find it very hard to animate stuff if there's any noise or things going on, distractions.
Yeah,
right.
It kind of reminds me of kind of like trying to put on like noise cancelling headphones, but things still kind of like seeping through. And I kind of like the way that I guess the title is like, your ad is here, It's kind of like, I like that.
You can't escape it. It's here.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really solid entry. I enjoyed this one a lot.
I just want to head over to 7th place with A Mugging in Lego City by Ed Bound, which currently has 271,000 views.
Yeah, we have to mention it. Like.
Well, if this thing were judged on view count,
it's truly remarkable. Like, I can't believe how well this video did. And like, yeah, I know Ed Bound was sort of asking like why, and I responded, and I was sort of speculating that like the fact that he had done the 24-hour stream, well, not quite 24, but like the really long stream beforehand, he built up so much hype in a really, really, really short window, and then releases the film instantly. Then after building up all that hype, and I get the impression that if a video does extremely, extremely well on YouTube, the instant it's released, then like it sort of snowballs from there. The algorithm takes note, like, whoa, people are really invested in this one as soon as it's come out, so we should probably push this one harder.
And it's really mad as well, because it's got like more views than a lot of his Marvel and DC films, like instantly.
So yeah, I'd like to think that it being a THAC entry, and of course, the fact that he streamed it, but yeah, like it would be nice to think that THAC actually plays a part in, how well this is done for him.
Yeah, I'd like to see him enter more in the future.
Yeah. I mean, he has been doing the occasional THAC entry, but yeah, it would be nice if he does continue to enter, or even enters Brawl as well. I mean, we have said it before that it's like, hey, Brawl would be the perfect fit for Edbound since he works fast. Like, he seems to often make Brickfilms in like a week anyway. But then, of course, we've said like, oh well, then there'd be would there be any fun in it if it's the same thing he always does? Like,
I do like as well with Edbound as well. It's like with this, like you were saying then that he, THAC may have played a part in making this film as big as it was, but I think it kind of, you could say it both ways, like.
Oh yeah, he helped make this THAC like one of the biggest ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Because people joined because they were seeing his stream, but.
Yeah, has that been quantified yet? Like how many entries did he help? I
haven't actually gone back to look to see if there were entries from people who joined specifically, after he started streaming and said like, oh, I saw this on Edbound's stream. But yeah, in the film, we should talk about the film and not just the YouTube analytics. But this one I was particularly impressed by the fact that like, the dialogue animation is extremely fluid throughout the entire video, and like the emphasis on all the words, like it's like that, going back to like what I was saying. I mean, of course it's a shorter video, but like it has that really, really engaging look to the dialogue animation. It's just so fine-tuned to the delivery of the lines. I just love seeing that.
It is saying something, isn't it, when it's like the entire film is just a dialogue scene really, but it's so like but the animation's so good, and it's so kind of like really playful and energetic. It
never lets up. It never just falls back on still frames or anything.
Yeah, very lively.
I also really love that animation of the minifigure being hit by the car. This is really good.
That was a really impressively animated shot as well. Yeah. But actually, this one, I mean, we actually haven't really talked a lot yet about sort of theme interpretation, but this one actually was one of my favorites in how it used the theme, and I'm kind of surprised to say that because it almost feels like, I don't exactly want to say obvious. I mean, there was another entry in the playlist that had sort of a very similar plot, but like I just felt this was a particularly good use of resolve because like, the way the police officer arrives and it resolves the situation in such a way that it's just a lose-lose for everybody. I don't want to go into like a sort of political analysis or anything, but it's practically like a, you could see the police officer as like an enlightened centrist, or he's like, he has to find this perfect middle ground, but then it just kind of doesn't do anything for anyone.
Yeah, and at the end, the other guy ends up getting mugged.
The final punchline is so good.
I think my favorite punchline was where he was like, "Would you mind handing over your knife?" He's like, "No," and he's like, "That's an order." No, he pulls a gun on him.
That's an order.
That's an order.
But yeah, just the fact that the other guy just turns around and mugs the mugger, and just the timing and just give me your money.
Something else I kind of love about this, which like, with the whole mod element thing, people use it in some creative ways. Sometimes it's a little more blatant, but something I like about this one is just the massive amounts of just stacked red or blue and white bricks that are just in every shot is just so funny.
Yeah, it's a good idea. If you just have big stripes of the mod element on your walls, because then you basically never have to think about it again.
Yeah, that kind of dooms me.
And we do complain sometimes about like the team drops, and actually this THAC, it was like there was a lot of team drops this THAC. People were saying the team left, right, and center throughout the playlist, but like in this one, especially if you're actually watching the full playlist, the team drop in this, it seems to take on a new meaning. It's practically as if it's making fun of the playlist itself.
A little bit,
especially with when the punchline comes right after that as well.
So really, I'm consistently impressed by Edbound's comedy style, and like just the way he does it. And there's a lot of imitators, but like he's just quite clever about it. He's just so tight with the comedy.
Yeah, definitely. definitely a good person to be like one of the most influential Brickfilms.
Yeah, well, you know, generally speaking, when you say that somebody's like, oh, they're sort of copying his style or whatever, you're talking about the animation. But like, it's harder to nail like taking influence from a style of writing or just sort of general, the less tangible things. You know?
Yeah, I think with the writing, it becomes a lot more obvious if someone rips off writing, because it'll just be a copy and paste almost, you know?
Yeah, like I feel like he's quite careful. He carefully considers things. Like the Ezra Miller and Will Smith one was really good, but like I in lesser hands it would have been really bad. I said this before on the podcast, I think, but like, you know, I could just totally see somebody without the same consideration that he has doing it, and it would just make me roll my eyes. But like, he just knows what to do.
I do like that there's a lot of like people who try, you say, like trying to do the Edbound style, and they'll try and do like his voice. There's that a couple of times in like this playlist, I think, like, oh, they're trying to do the Edbound voice.
He has such an iconic voice. Like, he's a very good voice actor. But I can always tell when it's him.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, he is one of those guys, like, similar to Keshin, I guess, where like he can voice every character in his video and do them all well. And like, it's funny that he's doing all the voices himself. Like, it adds to his own style. Like, it doesn't just feel like he's just doing them because he can't get anyone else. Like, they all feel like
it's
good.
part of his like identity as a brick filmer. I think like it's part of like his films. It is like
his comedic voice is quite literally his comedic voice. Yeah.
Right.
I guess we should probably head on to sixth place, Unsettled by James Kaywood. And I was this is one that really kind of grew on me, you know, as it kind of like, the more I watched it, and I just really like the, you know, it's a quite, you know, it's a serious brick film, but it's handled, you know, really well, I think, and it's got quite a, you know, story that can cover, but I guess resonate with a lot of people, and I just really like the way it was told, and the cinematography, the visual side of it is also really good, and for a very short brick film as well, but it's it's really good.
It is done in that sort of particular way where it works as a serious brick film, in the sense of just conveying the idea, where you don't mind that it's Lego.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is like, it's one of these concepts that it's one of the hardest things to articulate. I don't know how to explain it.
I think the atmosphere has a lot to do with that, I think, in this particular one. Like, just the way the atmosphere was crafted, and the different colors, and the dark room, and just, it really lends itself well to the story, I think. Yeah.
And it is quite striking visually, and, you know, it's a nice 4:3 entry. It looks good in 4:3. But, like, you know, there's barely any, like, set builds, but, like, there's a lot of striking shots where there's just a solid color background, which, of course, it's good for THAC to do stuff like that.
You know, all of his time probably went into making that screen replacement look absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
That's a big pet peeve of mine, is when people do screen replacements and they don't quite go all the way, but the screen replacements in all these shots are really good.
Yeah, that's something we bring up from time to time as well, where people just have a screen overlaid, but they've made no effort to, like, make it match the focus, or just
lighting,
the color tint and the contrast and everything.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, this is something I think about, like, with the way that there aren't many sets or anything, but it's almost like something that you don't even really consider. Like, it's just like that well kind of, you know, considered and shot, that it's like, it doesn't feel like there are, you know, corners being cut or anything.
Like, you don't get that feeling watching it initially. But it's like, if you can construct the strong visuals that work to tell the story without actually needing, like, much of a set. I guess it's kind of funny, like, we were talking about your own winning entry, and like, the sets are so impressive and all that, where it's like, I guess you can do it either way. there's no like magic formula. It's not like, oh, if you have amazing sets you're going to win, or oh, if you do something impressive without sets you're going to win. It's like you can make a good film in different types of ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really has to do with just the individual creator's style, and kind of being true to that is really like, I think, really important. And a lot of times people try to mimic and copy, which can be really good to learn specific skills, but eventually you have to kind of develop your own style. And no matter what that is, like, I think, you know, if it's you, if it is well done and you've paid attention to a lot of the details, then like really any style of video has a good chance of placing high in a competition like this.
And I'd like to follow up on that, so I'm going to keep something in mind for when we actually get to your entry, because we've already talked a lot about it, but now I have something to say, but I won't jump the gun.
I just want to kind of add that thing you were saying then is that I feel like you know, there is some form of imitation or like inspiration which I think that everyone goes through at the start of their kind of like journey, and I think in a lot of ways it is definitely something that can be valuable in terms of learning skills, learning why someone would do something. But I think as you develop, you start to recognize your own characteristics that you can put into a film, and your own, you know, personal identity that's kind of formed over that time. And I think that you start to realize that you're starting to make films which are, you know, entirely your films in your style, and that's something that I think, like, you know, you see from experience, you know, brick filmers and I guess filmmakers in general, like, you know, learning their craft.
Yeah, and of course this is the type of film where it feels like, you know, the creator has put a part of themselves into the film. You know, it's not just.
It did have that very personal vibe to it.
Yeah.
I also really liked that James Cawood did on the story the reaction of hearing that he got 6th place. I saw on Instagram.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I must find it.
Oh wait, something I'm just noticing. Did he do a mouth replacement for every shot? I think the face has a smile. I think the face you see at the very last frames is the actual face, and I think he flips it to a frown.
I think the frown is the replaced one.
Yeah, the frown is a digital version, I think.
So yeah, I guess whenever it's a frown, it's tracked.
Huh, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we should move over to what number are we on now?
Number 5. Yeah,
5th?
The Depleted Artists by Turtle Flight Studios.
Yes.
Yeah, this kind of in terms of you know, integration of the logo. This one.
Yes.
Once again, I feel like, even though I already said it on the results stream, you know, obviously we're not going to give something bonus points for the best integration of the logo, but this one has the best integration of the logo, and it's just a fun thing to see.
Yeah. But yeah, I love that kind of the way that the paintings kind of form through, like, you know, whipping a piece of paper, and it's just a really novel way of like visually showing that. And I just really like the sort of techniques of this film, and
the fact that it's a non-minifig film. But it's not just that it's non-minifig, but it has a really large articulated puppet. To me,
the eyebrows are really good.
Yeah, the eyebrows are good. It just seems so difficult for THAC, because, you know, working with so many more points of articulation with a larger figure, it takes so long to set up each individual frame. And when we were doing the results, I think 2 people made this. One of them was saying that, like, all of the wide shots took like 3 hours each.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's pretty rough if you only have 24 hours.
There's a shot when the character looks up towards the camera that I think is really interesting perspective wise. I think 105-ish. I don't know, that shot just struck me.
Yeah, that's nice. And of course the fact that he can actually bend the neck, that he could set up a shot like that in a brick film, which usually he can't. Or, you know, sometimes people do it like head looking up shot, and they've taken the head off and like stuck it on the, like, you know, rotated it and stuck it, and it just looks unnatural. But the fact that this figure actually has an articulated neck, it doesn't look unnatural.
I think as well, like, the way that having a build like that, considering the ways in which the character was actually going to move, must have required some like hindsight in terms of like how they're going to do that, which is really impressive as well. And really creative, inventive Brickfilms. Really sort of like, just some really novel ideas. I love the way that it ends with that like Sistine Chapel reference.
Mm-hmm.
That was so good.
Yeah, the hand comes in.
Yeah,
it holds on the pose. Yeah, it just feels very classic. Nice, no dialogue film, and of course, like figure in the real world environment.
Yeah,
just well done. Yeah, again, sort of classic stuff.
I always like when you can kind of put a real life hand into a shot and have it actually work. So I guess we'll see that in the next one too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, on to the 4th place entry, Lamentation Station by Corbanzo Films, and
also Toad Productions.
Yes.
The co-production.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, forgot. But it's such a vibe, of an entry. And there is this like one thing I've really sort of noticed, upon rewatches, is that there really isn't really much of a set at all. It's just like in the lighting and like, the way it's shot, that it kind of just feels like it's this world. And I mean, yeah, it's just really interesting just how like it pulls off this feel. It's this like luminous sort of city of some sort, and
it really does nail the vibe.
Yeah,
it just seems to have sort of out of focus lights in the background, which like practically could be just whatever's in the room is out of focus in the background, like the room that they're shooting it in. Yeah, it's not just that though. Like I really like the cardboard set as well. Like when
the cardboard was really good.
Yeah, when he gets inside.
Didn't expect to like the cardboard that much.
I guess I kind of, this might be another one where I'd say like I wasn't entirely sure what everyone else would make of it as well, but then it managed to do really well in the judging. Like other people, it clicked with other people as well, where like it sort of just draws people in with its overall vibe. It's really nice. The sound as well, all the music.
Yeah,
it
definitely
fits with the visuals. I don't know where it's from. If it's actually, oh yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if it's original or not, but I just checked the YouTube description and there are songs recognized by the YouTube system. So that answers that.
I did like as well the like yellow hands, whereas like the way the lighting is done, so it's like it looks like it's the Lego hand, and there's a couple of entries that had that kind of gag of a close up hand, and it's just like a live action shot.
Oh yeah, the hand like that runs along like as legs, and I love that there's like a screen in the background where you can see like people performing music, and it's like so rapid, going from frame to frame to frame, but like it just looks really cool. Like the fact that I've been sort of thinking about experimenting with things like that, where you have something in the foreground that's moving more consistently, but then something in the background is like just going crazy, jumping from one frame to the next, but it's still, you can still see what it actually is though. Like it's people on a stage performing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool sort of like music video style elements in this.
Yeah, for sure. Something I really appreciate about it too is you can tell like that they were using the lights they had to their fullest potential. Like the lighting is really a cool style, and it all looks very intentional, but like you can see things like just really unconventional sort of lights, whether it's out of focus in the background or this almost looks like some kind of Death Star desk light.
Death Star lamp, yeah. In fact, I think William, actually, you have the same Death Star. It's nice to see it making use of just the things that they have, but in a cohesive sort of way, in an interesting way.
No, it's definitely kind of really cool to see a vibe being made out of something where like you're just using whatever you've got,
and
just to
it really is successful in drawing you in. Catching that sort of dreamy feel. Like it's not just odd stuff, and then you're like, well, that was different. It's also legitimately good.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of feels like a world.
If this same film had like just regular overhead or flat kind of lighting, it would be much less or much more difficult to get into the story, but the lighting really does help kind of explain things.
And the choice of music, even if it's sourced from elsewhere, like there's a great there's an art to choosing music from elsewhere correctly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, it was not an obvious choice, but he feels like it's, you know, thought has been put into getting that kind of music that would fit the vibe of a film. So yeah, definitely. I guess we want to head on to third place, to top three.
Top three.
It's a Peer Into the Eye with 2x4 Productions. And yeah, this one was one that had a lot of discussion. I guess I can say that much.
We always try to strike the sort of balance of like how much should we say about the judging process. And I think when we weren't recording, I was sort of saying this where like sometimes I almost feel like I'd like if the general public could see the entire judging discussion, because if they could, they might understand how much discussion and thought has gone into certain, especially the top three, of course, you know, it's going to be contentious. Well, the first place one wasn't, that was easy. But but like this one was like a real sort of dark horse in that, like, initially with each individual judge's rank, it placed lower within the top 10, but a couple of people started like fighting for it, and like, you know, putting forward like why they liked it as much as they did, and, you know, convincing other people. Like, I mean, obviously it was already in the top 10, so like it's not like other people didn't like it or whatever, but like, you know, there was some people saying like this really ought to be a top 3 entry, like it should actually be a prize winner, and so it rose throughout the process.
It sounds like that judging process was kind of how I thought of this video too for the first time. Like, I didn't think much of it the first time. Like, I knew it was definitely going to place, but the more I watched it, like, the better it got, and I just started noticing more and more things, and it's really quite elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, like when I watched the playlist first, I was thinking to myself like, wow, like I know it's going to be first place, but like second and third is harder for me to predict, and usually it's kind of easy for me to predict, especially because like I've, you know, in sort of knowing generally what we're looking for in like Bricks in Motion contests, especially, like I can kind of think, well, that's probably going to be, you know, a winner. But with this THAC, obviously the playlist is like really high quality standard throughout, so it was pretty tough. It's like, what's going to be second and third? But I know that I rewatched the playlist like a second. I watched the whole playlist again in full a second time, and then yeah, I think it was really on the second watch where I was like, yeah, to me this is one of the best entries.
Yeah, I think that there's so much to it with there's multiple moments that kind of feel like they're like the wow moment. There's like so many elements to it. There's like a couple of shots where it goes to close up, and the way that it goes from the, you know, the minifigure scale to that kind of brick built, you know, with the stabbing is like so well done. Like it's such a like a seamless transition. And then you got the second shot there. He's got like the hands and the legs are made out of like sort of like paper like material, but it's just done in such a way where it just seamlessly flows.
But I guess once again I feel like reiterating what I already said in the results stream, which was that like in THAC it's always impressive to have a nice complete story that doesn't just feel like there's no cop out ending. Like it doesn't just end. Like there's ideas going on and it has a resolution, and again it's like a 3-minute entry, which is like super impressive in THAC. So, you know, I'm sure we've said similar things many times before, but like I feel like people might think on a surface level like, oh, like some other entry has you know, more fluid animation or whatever, but like to me this one it has the complete story. It has so much creativity in how it's portrayed, in how everything is conveyed, and there's a lot going on in terms of switching between different worlds and, you know, different scales and sets and like types of figures that are moving, and just how everything is conveying the story.
I think as well, like there are so many elements to it, and I think from the story level, it's just doing so much. We can kind of go on about like the different techniques and stuff like that, but I just think on solely on the actual kind of story and concept, it does a lot. It is really creative.
So that's why, to me, it felt like one of the most satisfying on a complete film level, rather than thinking like, oh, look, there's a shot here where the camera's kind of jittering a bit. Like that sort of stuff kind of leaves my mind once it becomes a compelling entire film.
Yeah, when there's this much going on, it kind of, there's so much being considered in in the elements that really make a film what it is, where it kind of.
And also, I like to think that it keeps a level of fairness to contests. Like, I don't like talking about this too much because it almost sounds like we're saying like, oh, it's poorly made. But I'm not saying it's poorly made. But like, if we're not just looking for like who has the most technically amazing visuals and animation and all that, you can be a top 3 entrant because you have a really well done story, like complete and compelling on a conceptual level with a lot of creativity going into the film. And of course, that's also not to say that we don't consider amazing technical qualities, because obviously the first place winner is the most amazing technically in the playlist, and it's first.
I think the depiction of like that alternate realm, the alternate world, was really unique. Like I liked the little eyeball characters and it was just really unique. I haven't seen anything quite like that, and the color palette too in that sequence was really interesting too.
And it's really nice to have that sequence that it has that specific vibe to it, with the nice sound design there, and just everything's like simple but effective. Like it has this particular look to the set with the way everything's built and colored. And I do like those guys like in the chain where like they fall off into the smaller scale guys going through the doorway.
I really like that build as well of the that's like beast that's kind of like a winged kind of like animal. That's like really really well animated and designed. But I think that like there's something about like the kind of like world building, this idea, it kind of feels really just completely fresh, and like this is like just like a novel concept. And I don't know, something like that, where it kind of just feels like so much thought has been put into the like idea of like this is like this like like realm, all this done within
24 hours.
THAC. It's just this is like what's really impressive about that.
I appreciate too the sort of small cues he gives too, where like when he's like peer into the eye and the beast kind of like nudges him up onto the ledge. Like he didn't need to do that. He could have easily just like jumped up there, but I like just adding that little bit of extra interest there too.
Yeah, I think it's a good sign that we have a lot to say about this one.
Yeah, definitely.
But should we carry on to second place?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Now go on to Which Am I by Joko. It was funny when we got to the second place on the stream, the results stream, and he was like, "But it's not even finished."
Yeah, someone needs to tell me what wasn't finished, because this looked like a pretty solid.
I agree. Like I guess
film to me.
The very ending is pretty abrupt, but like it doesn't feel unfinished to me, especially as a THAC film. Like, come on. But it is it's interesting to note that every THAC top 3 this year is like over 3 minutes, and I know some of those are with credits, but like, that's kind of crazy. Like I hope people don't take away the message that they must aim to do a 3-minute THAC entry, because that would just destroy a lot of people. And it doesn't guarantee that it's
you don't want people to kind of get into the mindset of like more time equals more good,
Yeah, I mean, obviously in the past there's been plenty of 1 minute, 1.5 minute.
And that being said, we've got a few in the top 10 that are like Unsettled is just over a minute long. Mugging in Lego City is 1 minute 15, so it's not like they're all like 3 minutes long.
But it is the case that if you do make a long one that packs in as much as a film like this does, then yeah, it's impressive.
Definitely.
When we're certainly going to take note of that. Like, wow, there's a lot in this. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, this could have easily been a 7-minute film, but even getting it down to 3 minutes, like, just says a lot to the intentionality with the pacing too.
I think there's a few, like instances in this playlist where I kind of just felt like I don't know how this was really achieved,
Yeah, I can hardly believe what I'm watching for THAC. Like, but especially I keep referencing it, but yeah, like your first place one. I mean, yeah, we were literally dumbfounded in the call. We were just, in the initial judges' call watching, like there's plenty of, well, okay, I shouldn't say plenty, but there's talk during entries, but then sometimes one entry comes up where everyone just suddenly stops talking, and you can just tell that they're all just sitting there like thinking, "Oh my god, look at this." So basically, with your one, all we were saying was like, oh, "What? Huh? Like, how? This is amazing."
Yeah, with Joko's, like, I know kind of how mine got made because I'm the one who made it. But watching this one, like, I don't know how it was done. There's so much in here.
Yeah, I was gonna say that Joko's one was sort of similar, where a lot of what we were saying was just like, I can't believe that this was all done for THAC. Like, how?
Yeah. Oh yeah, no.
And yeah, it's just a very fun film to watch. Like, that's the key, I think. It's also fun.
That's the thing as well. Like it like with it being like 3 minutes long, it keeps up the energy the entire time. It's very kind of like fast paced and there's so many like it's the energy is just like on there like the entire time. Like the way that like it within shots things kind of move around and like
yeah, it goes the mirror shot is incredible.
It feels like the entire time there's like he's kind of describing these things and it's like visually being said and like the way that like it kind of feels like
it's very ambitious, especially for THAC, but even just in general, like it's so ambitious to do stuff like the mirror shot and to have like the flashbacks where it's like switching between the sets, but it has the figure matches the placement in the frame and on a different set. But really, it's just so creative. Like the entire style of the film, how everything is conveyed, just full of creativity.
I do really like that that bit when he's introducing the characters and he has the butcher, the baker, and the barman, and like it's like he actually animates the stutter where this light comes on. And it's like it's supposed to be like a candle maker, and then the candle goes out as he says the barman. Like that kind of like detail, it's just really creative.
And I kind of feel like I've talked about the creativity of this one and also 2x4's one, and I guess like if you have that's like really really full of creativity feel, like that's you're probably gonna do pretty well. But I kind of feel like saying like 2x4 and Joko are sort of staples of the BIM contest top 10s, and have also placed top 3 before. But it's like obviously we're not like biased in favor of people we like or people who consistently enter contests. It's just that if there's people who like infuse that high level of creativity and like completeness into their work consistently, and they also enter pretty much every contest, like they're increasing their chances of placing very consistently. We're not thinking, oh, it's this guy again, so we'll place him high.
Yeah, I love all the faces swapping around and when you have a video with this high energy, it can be difficult to edit it in a way where it's not jarring, but this one just flows so well. Like,
yeah, it does flow.
I can't even explain it. It just flows so well.
But because I've seen like over the years, you always see the same sort of like from some corner some complaint comes up, so I just kind of feel like stating like it would be more biased to think like, oh, this person or these people they place all the time, so we should bump them down. Like that would be wrong to me. That makes sense, right?
Oh yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
I hope you wouldn't bump someone down just because they're placing consistently.
Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like we always have to find a balance. And again, relating to your own entry, it's like we would never think to ourselves like, this entry is so impressive, like it's just so on another level. It's so obvious that it's going to win. We have to pick something else as the winner. Ha ha ha! That'll really surprise everyone. Like that would also just be unfair and wrong to me. To think that something's too obvious.
Like, oh no, this is too obvious. I'm gonna really confuse people with the entry lists.
To practically treat it like, oh, this person's cheating by making something that's this good.
Yeah.
That's almost how I feel about the Oscars, but that's a different story.
Yeah, oh man, we could be here all day. But yeah. So I guess great film though. I don't just want to talk about the judging and reactions and whatnot, but obviously in being the admin of BIM, I do think a lot about like, oh, I hope people actually understand all these things.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's like, what? You mean you didn't get that check from Joko? I thought we all did.
Yeah, I love the credits too. That's something that stuck out to me as well. Like, it's something that I want to do now. Or he just has like a wall built with bricks, and then he's got the title in front of that and the credits, where it just adds more to the film, I think.
That is nice, and that is something I'm always jealous of, when people have a credit sequence that actually has style to it.
Yeah, it never really even occurred to me. And I'm like, wow, that actually is a really good idea. And I think you can add on to the feel of your story even after it ends. So
yeah, because I mean, I always feel like I just have the most boring like stock titles and credits, and I'm just thinking to myself, man, if I make another like genuinely trying to make a good film here project, I should just like ask somebody else who's good at these things, like, hey, can you do the credit sequence for me and make it like cool?
Yeah. I mean, there's no shame in kind of like, collaborating with in those kind of fields, recognizing someone's skill in a certain aspect.
Yeah, someone else could do it better than you trying to learn it from scratch. Yeah, like getting someone else to do the music. Yeah.
It's also a bit like I have had that feeling of like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna use the like Calibri font and slob that over an image of a frame from the film, and and credits.
Yeah, I think the more that you kind of practice in your field, no matter what it is, like, the more you really realize why specialties exist. And
yeah, for sure.
And I think especially with brick filming, it can kind of, a lot of the appeal when you're younger is like, oh, I can now control every aspect of this film. And that's really helpful for getting stuff out there and being able to actually make a film realistically. But then as you go, you can start to see that like some people are just better at things.
Yeah.
And it's really good to like kind of utilize their skills and, invite them on board to do stuff.
Yeah. Once you are trying to operate on a higher level, you can kind of think like, oh my God, I can't believe that I'm expected to be on that level in all of these aspects.
No, I think it's a natural process of like, when you get really good at a particular skill, you start to recognize that you can't keep to that level with everything, and like it almost feels like a shame to almost be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try, and because you're not gonna be a master in like so many things, so it's I think it can be good to kind of recognize like that person is really good at this aspect, I should work with them, and it's also a real it's a great experience to work with people and recognize their skills, and
that's true.
Also have the understanding and knowledge of what goes into those skills as well. That's the thing. I think like it's great to kind of start off, I think, with like doing as much as you can just so you understand what goes into it, but also recognizing that like someone could do this better than me.
Yeah, I think Forrest Whaley was saying that like when he was on the podcast that like it's good to have that kind of base knowledge of everything with the like lighting and the directing and sound design and all that, just so that it gives you the vocabulary to be able to like actually speak to people and tell them what you're wanting, even if you are hiring people kind of to do different aspects of it. Like to be able to understand how to how to talk about it can really help improve.
And also, I'd say that it's good to have some knowledge of doing it yourself, because if you're sending over footage for somebody else to work on, you know, oftentimes you want to have shot it in such a way that it's actually possible for them to do the work on it.
Yeah, you can't just slap a green screen behind something and be like, oh, this person's gonna key it out, but it's a terrible green screen. Like
exactly, yeah. But we've certainly wandered off track. I don't know if we have anything more to say about Joko's second place entry.
It's really good. I think it's one of those.
It's very, very.
It's one of those ones where we were watching it during like we did like a watch party. Joko was there, and I just said like, "How did you do this?" Just like how.
Yeah, it probably was second to your one in the level of response in the call. So I guess it's no surprise that it came second place.
Yeah, this is a film that I would show people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
if they don't know what brick filming is, and I wanted to show them like what modern brick filming is, and like this is what I would show them. It's hilarious. It's fast paced. It keeps a lot of that classic charm.
Yeah. There's a lot of classic charm to it. Yeah, where you could show it to outsiders, and then they would get it. Like, yeah, this is fun and engaging to watch.
And the lighting is
I would say that that is a kind of an interesting consideration of like, could you show this to someone who like likes animation or whatever, and like do get it? I think they would. It's like this has got such a unique energy to it. I think this, and going back to EPOS, but I shared a couple of films to a friend, and like trying to kind of like who hadn't seen like brick films or anything, and they got a really good reaction of, well, I showed them Unwavering Dedication and EPOS, and they really like both. So, but yeah, speaking of Unwavering Dedication, we spoke of.
Well, there's one more thing I want to say. We have to mention it. I, for some reason, I just absolutely love the shot in Joko's where there's a guy like on blue tack, and like throughout the entire shot, he's just like slowly falling down.
You're waiting for him to fall.
Because like that's happened. It's happened to me before, where something is just slowly creeping while you're animating. But
see, is he falling
so
or is he
funny
leaning in to listen to the conversation? Because that's what I thought. It looked intentional to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it does work on that level, but you can just tell that it's like just the guy is just slowly about to fall, and then eventually he's okay. I better fix that guy now. This is getting a bit.
And what I love about it as well is that you can kind of tell the speed at which he was animating, because there's one bit where he moves a lot, and then he's like really sort of like smoothly kind of
It's the sort of thing where usually it would come across as like unintentional. I mean, I'm not saying it's like entirely intentional, but like for some reason it just makes it more fun and engaging in my eyes, and that could be sort of bias as far as knowing, like as far as having made my own brick films and seeing similar things, but for some reason I just really enjoyed seeing that here in this specific instance.
And obviously as well, it's like a very THAC thing.
And of course it only fits in a film where like it has this sort of tone where it's kind of fun.
Yeah,
you couldn't have a guy like just slowly falling over in a super serious brick film.
Just like what was that entry? The fine one. If that happened in there, I don't think that would go over very well.
But yeah, should we?
But yeah.
Hand over to
Unwavering Dedication, which of course we have spent a lot
always
of the podcast already discussing, which means that it'll probably have a shorter section here than some of the other top 10 entries. But we were talking about sort of watching other brick films, and like when people are starting out and they might just sort of copy things, but then eventually they gain their own sort of voice and bring in influences in a more sort of intelligent way. So what I was wondering was, like, do you have anything in mind? What were your influences for, I guess, this film, but also your brick films in general? And this could be other brick films, or it could be real life films, or it could just be like history and having history in like graphic design and such.
Yeah, I don't know. Like for this film in particular, I don't think there were really many like direct influences. I'd say that like I have a pretty strong mental image of kind of the stories that I'll have planned out, and no doubt there is influence drawn from probably mostly movies that I've seen. I'm a big movie guy, but yeah, it's probably just a combination of things that I have recognized are like, oh, these are good shot compositions, or you know, this kind of shot would fit with this mood, just based on a whole bunch of examples. So there's not really a direct influence for this particular film. I kind of, once I had the idea, I had the kind of first shot in mind. That was kind of the first thing I thought of. And I was like, oh, I need a guy perched up in a tree like this, to kind of introduce you to the theme and the vibe and the setting, of everything.
Yeah, it was a very strong first shot.
Yeah, and that probably was the the most difficult shot to set up. Everything, all the branches and stuff were constantly moving, and I reshot it probably 3 times.
And was that actually the first thing that you shot?
It was the first thing I shot, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's good practice to shoot the most annoying shot first.
Yeah.
But it's really. I think it's great that you hooked people in immediately with that shot. Like straight away, you're like, oh, okay. That was really clever.
Yeah, I think a good strong opening shot is always a good idea.
Well, yeah, like.
But yeah, as far as more influences, like, you know, people in the brick filming world who do more sort of realistic style animation, not like, I love the cartoony stuff, and it's probably my favorite stuff to watch, but for some reason, like you, Sean, like whenever I start animating, it never is what comes out. It's more like, you know, I guess Forlorn Creature is more of a jack of all trades in terms of this. He has a lot of different styles, and a lot of times his stuff is pretty bouncy and cartoony, but like, I guess his SCP videos have been a good influence on sort of the tone of the animation itself. And, you know, Monotogo Studios, I guess those are some of the bigger ones. Forest Fire, of course.
I mean, yeah. It's interesting to me how you said that you basically only really watched a lot of brick films much more recently. So of course, you know, I'm kind of curious to know like what some of the ones that made the most impact on you are, especially because, like, let's say with some of us who've been at it for a while, you get to thinking like, obviously I can't speak for him, but like you might think somebody like Forlorn Creature might think like, oh, those SCP videos, they're so recent, they couldn't have possibly influenced anyone greatly yet. But so I feel like it's really nice to hear. It's nice for people to hear things like that. So yeah, if there's any other brick films that come to mind,
yeah,
like
I've got a playlist actually on YouTube, so I'll just read some of them. Like The Milkman from Chihuahua. It's a great one.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Welcome to Darkmoor. It's a really good stylistic movie. And there's Egyptian Holiday, The Exterminator by Keshin, Taco Trouble 2, of course, The Cleaners.
Thank you very much.
Forlorn Creatures, SCP
again,
videos.
with me, it's like, oh, Taco Trouble 2? That's so recent.
But yeah, those are kind of the videos that I keep in that playlist to kind of rewatch every once in a while, just to understand kind of how those movements work. And again, I chose those a lot because of the lighting too. It just really sets the tone and works really well. Even though the lighting situations are very different in each of those videos, they really are very tailored to the story. So that's kind of what I strive for in my films. So.
Well, yeah, I guess we often talk about like there's sort of a difference between like just managing to copy what somebody else has already done or else learning the underlying principles and the underlying theory behind what they were doing. Like if you're paying attention to more of the underlying theory, then you can adapt knowledge to other situations, even if it looks entirely different to what you picked up good advice from.
If your inspirations are not like, if you see the kind of films you make and it's not immediately obvious, I think that really sort of shows more that it's you're taking in more of the actual skill and like the understanding the kind of like what made those films what they are, rather than just being like, oh, I'm gonna make a film like Taco Trouble 2. You know, you're actually looking at like what you're deconstructing, like what made those films what they are, rather than just trying to copy them.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like, if you see a shot that you like, instead of copying that shot, just be like, why do I like that shot? Well, like, what works about it? Like, going through the lighting, the composition, like all that. Like, Yeah, I think that's more what I take influence from, and kind of trying to ask why things work really helps kind of sharpen those mental images when I start thinking of how to do certain projects.
Like, I don't know if you feel this, but do you feel like, to a large extent, when it comes to films like you make, or a lot of it is just like, there's not like an immediate like, oh yeah, this was from this. Sometimes it's literally just like, this is like something that just came from your head, and you just sort of like, yeah, this will be like a good story, or like, because I always think of that with, like, I think Joshua Nelson, who makes like really creative films, and like, you know, I remember like when we had him on the podcast, and we were like asking him about like what his inspirations for certain things, and it seemed like a lot of it was just naturally stuff that he kind of just, you know, not necessarily from one source. It was just like, this is something that he just came up with.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I'm a little bit more of like the AI art generators in a way, where like I have all this information in like a database that like these things look good because of all these reasons. And then I don't even like access those data like intentionally, but whenever I'm thinking of a story, like all the shots kind of come into my head as they end up appearing later on. There's not a lot of like, oh, I'm going to go searching for, you know, I guess a lot of times when I do graphic design, I'll pull up Google Images and I'll get a bunch of reference photos and kind of try to draw stuff from there. That's the exact opposite of how I usually do sort of filmmaking stuff. You know, like I'm not searching for inspiration. It's kind of already there in the back of my mind. And I really couldn't tell you what the inspiration was for like a bunch of different shots or this film. It's just kind of stuff I've learned over the years of doing it.
Over all the years, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and then just keeping basic technical principles in mind, like to actually execute it well. Because you can have all the greatest ideas in the world, but once you sit down with the bricks and the lights and the camera, like then you have to actually translate that onto a frame.
I feel like that's something that I sort of had to intentionally try to do. Like at some point I had the idea that I need to watch more real films, and not even to like crib bits and pieces from them, but like just if I just keep watching stuff, I'll just get this sort of innate understanding of how to convey things better than I already was doing. Like a sort of sixth sense, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might sound a bit, I'm always, you know, concerned about sounding pretentious, I guess, but
no, you're good. I will say one more thing on the inspiration. Most of my direct inspiration, I guess, comes from music, and that might sound really weird, but often when I'm listening to soundtracks or kind of more ambient music, scenes will develop in my head. And so I can't explain it, but usually the most of my video ideas come from when I'm listening to music.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's, I kind of feel the same.
I think a lot of people can relate to that, where you hear music and you can just imagine how a video would go to it.
I kind of felt that with classical music, you know, like you can imagine some kind of like, I don't know, fantasy story or something, you know. I mean, that's like kind of like, you know, a big approach for me for like, you know, a good long time was just, you know, listening to music and just like, coming up with the beats of a story based on, because, you know, I think, you know, there are like inherent kind of similarities that I think both like music and like film share in terms of like, you know, pacing and keeping that pacing going and you know, having a structure that really, you know, flows, you know. There's you know, taking the kind of like a beats of a film, you know, in your head, you know, kind of forming from like listening to music, it kind of makes sense, you know.
Yeah, and that might also just be because like, you know, the film is just so inherently tied to music and audio, so that probably also helps. There's a rhythm to everything in life, but
yeah, certainly if you're really interweaving the film with the music, then it does inform the rhythm of the film itself.
Yeah,
you were explaining how you had less footage than you ended up with film length.
Yeah, and me and my little brother Micah, we work well together. We were in like a jazz band together, so we've been playing music together for a while. And so we kind of both understand music and understand how we play and how we kind of see music's role in visual things as well. So it really helps to be able to kind of talk on that same level. And like he's far more talented than I am in terms of making the music, but to be able to be like, oh yeah, I think we need like this style of music, or we need to, you know, start with some of these drums and continue it. Yeah, it's just it really helps with the film.
Mm-hmm. It feels to me like it. I'm just so happy to see somebody like you come along and, you know, like make this and win. Seemingly, it practically feels like out of nowhere. To me, I'm always kind of, and it's a kind of silly thing because it's Brickfilming, but like I'm always thinking, man, I wish there were more people hanging around who were like, you know, older than literal, like, teenagers and were more like artistically inclined and like have this, you know, interesting things in their background. So it's like, wow, you know, especially talking to you now, it's like, man, we need more of you around.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope to stay around for a while. Like I guess part of the reason I actually wanted to enter, you know, Brawl and now THAC is just like I can tell there's a good group of people in the Bricks in Motion community that you know, think in similar ways, but also different enough ways to where I can really glean a lot from them. So I think a lot of times though it is hard in kind of an online sort of faceless interactions to really see who's kind of in it for the art form. So it's nice to be able to put something out that's like, hey, I'm here for I'm here for that reason. So
and get recognized.
Yeah. So now hopefully more good conversations will come from this. But yeah, I hope to be around for a while.
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to seeing what you'll do next after this.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see where you go.
I will say the mod elements in this one, oh man, I had to reshoot so many scenes. I forgot it so many times, and because I generally don't design my set based on the mod element. I kind of try to just throw it in afterwards to have like the minimal amount of those colors as possible. You know, if it doesn't work with my scene. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword because I think you can hide it really nicely, but then like you hide it so well that you don't realize it's not in the shot when you switched angles or that kind of thing. So I'm very thankful for the 15 seconds of
15 seconds is good. Yeah. I mean, I do think that like those of us who've been around who've entered so many more THACs and Brawls, like, yeah, I could certainly imagine that people who haven't done it as many times, it's easier to forget.
Yeah, I started putting my little blue and white bricks on my enter key so that before I would take frames, I would have to put it in.
That's actually clever, yeah. But actually, I kind of feel like just sort of going back on something I just said, where I was saying like, you know, it would be nice to have people who are older than teenage and whatnot, but like that's not entirely you know, there are some people who are teenagers, but they are still sort of on that track of like, you know, being more plugged in with like art and just good thinking, thinking wise. So
I was just gonna say, Sean, that you should you know, consider the demographic of this podcast.
Yeah, but
don't look down on them because they're young.
That's right. Yeah, it's easy to just make a general statement, even if you don't actually like think it's entirely true.
Right.
So I got to clarify that.
It's surprising sometimes when you find out like how old some Brickfilmers are with the kind of stuff that they're making.
True,
like you're like, wait, you're like, you know, how old are you? Like, because like, yeah, I mean, I think people pick up inspiration from, you know, each other, and it's surprising how quickly, you know, that inspiration can pick up and how much learned from, you know.
Just thinking about the THAC results, like I'm pretty sure Chazen is like younger than his films make him seem.
And he's been around for a while now as well.
I'm sure there's plenty of others. A few years, yeah. I'm sure there's plenty of others the same. Maybe it's more the case that when I see people making good stuff, I just instantly assume that they must be in their 20s by now, but it's actually not true.
But I mean, that is kind of just true if you look back at like all like, you know, old Brickfilms or whatever, like it's, you know, they've always kind of been quite young, you know, making quite sort of like complex films.
Well, oh yeah, well, especially that. I mean, going back on brickfilms.com, to me, all those people seemed like adults, but they weren't, because I was younger than them at the time, and like, so you know, some of them were like, I don't know, they could have even been 15 making those films that were so influential to me, and they seemed like
it
adults.
is funny when it kind of warps your kind of perception of like age and stuff, because you think of like, wait, so they were making these really impressive brick films like 15 years ago? They must be like really old now.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance to walk to, like in the Discord server, where like I don't talk to people in their 20s the same way I talk to people who are, you know, 12, 13. But online you don't really know, and you can kind of tell, but like, yeah, it's just an interesting, like when people ask for advice and stuff, and you can tell who's like asking specific questions and who's, yeah, it's interesting kind of interacting with people there. I'd love to know like what your guys' perspectives are on that, having been around much longer.
I mean, certainly there's sometimes certain topics come up where I always have this feeling of like, oh, I have to, you know, argue against the sort of things people are saying here. But then I do get that thought in my mind of like, wait a minute, I don't want to debate a topic like this with like a 14-year-old.
Right.
Like, if this was real life, I'd just be like, well, that's just a 14-year-old. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there's certain things that like people say when they're just like super young, and you just think, well, you know, they have some growing to do. So
It's like, it doesn't do me any good, it doesn't do you any good.
Yeah, but you wouldn't get into it on that level as if they're the same age as you know.
Right.
So yeah, it is very, very easy to forget the age differences on when you're just talking to people on Discord. Yeah,
it's really nice when people ask for advice on like a shot or something, and then they send an update of the shot with like, and it's like, wow, like I wish everyone would do this, because you know it makes giving advice so much better too.
That's true. Yeah.
Where like sometimes I feel like people might just want to get their stuff seen.
I mean, yeah, it is. It's always kind of exciting to me if I am explaining some concept and then somebody just like gets it, and yeah, they post another thing and they've immediately improved, and I'm like, oh my god, I explained the concept and they actually understood it and they just implemented it immediately.
Yeah, I would have killed
old
for that kind of interaction when I was, you know, learning, because I was doing this all on my own and trying to learn the hard way. Like I used to use window light for my brick films.
Wow, that was.
But yeah, just having someone to tell me like, hey, maybe you should consider lighting your things this way, or
It is funny how much like I think like we, you know, you sort of saying about like, you know, reminiscing on like the way you used to do things. It does kind of connect with me a lot in a lot of ways. Methods you used to do, that you were saying earlier about like, yeah, how you had the, you know, you should shoot lots of very short videos, and you used to kind of like flip through photographs at one point, you know, and
yeah, all that stuff is pretty relatable to me.
yeah,
As well,
and also as well, like, yeah, so I used to use window light as well, and you know, kind of thinking like, oh, this time of year it's okay because there's more clouds, and then there's, when it's sunny, it's like,
yeah.
or like, oh yeah, when it was like, I always hated like those days where it was like sunny but with some clouds. But yeah, it's
yeah, but then the clouds move and it creates light flicker.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of my earliest tests, I think I literally shot them outside, like on a garden path, because of, well, the sun is out here, so it's bright.
There you go.
But I would say though, like what you were saying then about like how, yeah, you know, you're having to learn all this stuff the hard way because you were, you know, you weren't getting that kind of advice, and yeah, I that is something that I could not have imagined really. Like, you know, I think I was fortunate enough that for most of the journey, I was, you know, pretty much learning everything from advice. So, yeah, that the fact that you got to a point where, you know, like you started, when you started showing your brick films and they're like that at that level, and that's mostly, you know, from your own experience and learning yourself. That's really pretty impressive because, yeah, I kind of feel like I had this, you know, sense of when I joined Bricks in Motion, I thought like, because I hadn't really heard otherwise, I thought like my films were great, like, you know, oh, these are, you know, I couldn't really take the criticism that well at first, it took me a while. I mean, maybe it's an age thing and maturity thing, but like, I think I got to a point where I was like not taking it too much to heart. Like I understood that like I could actually realistically improve these things, but I think pretty much everything I learned is from, well, in the early days anyway, was just listening to advice and taking that seriously and making an effort to improve.
I'm just still so dumbfounded that you guys were able to get through all of these in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
like that's a lot of stuff to go through.
We were feeling it, like, and we were thinking, the next year we'll probably give it longer. We won't guarantee that it's going to be 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah. People aren't going to be happy about that, but
yeah, because it was a bit sort of like, this is a bit tough now. But I mean, I still think we still discussed everything like we usually do. We still discussed it to a point that we were happy with. We didn't just kick it out the door because we had to.
Yeah, that's good. I think people would be able to tell if it were rushed.
Sort of knowing like what we look for and how the judging works and all that. I'm happy to, in the knowledge that it to me it doesn't seem rushed. Like it feels like we still got it done like we usually do. But next year, especially if it continues to go up in entry counts, like we'll have to give it a bit more time. I am looking at my Audacity timeline now, and it's actually creeping up on 3 hours.
Oh. Well, I'm guessing that we probably should wrap up at some point. I'm just thinking I'm going to be editing this now. So,
I think it is coming up on that time that we ought to start wrapping things up. So, once again, big congratulations for winning THAC.
Thank you.
Yeah, and congratulations for getting a really cool Lego set as well.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Hopefully before too long. Yeah.
Always a good bonus. Yeah, it really was just fun to enter though, to see what I could actually make in 24 hours. And
I mean, that certainly seems like the good sort of final note, which we always try to put at the forefront, is that THAC is for the participation. It's not for trying to win, because I think people end up oftentimes just disappointed and dejected if they're like banking on placing at a certain high up point and then they end up not. Like whenever I enter, I always just I basically assume I'm not going to place, and then if I do, it's just a nice little added bonus.
Also, I think it's something I want to kind of reiterate, because it's something that I kind of felt like I saw, I see it, every THAC pretty much, but like some people kind of get genuinely really kind of disappointed in the films they've made because they feel like they've not really like made a good film or whatever, and it's like they feel like, oh, is it even point sharing something that's unfinished or whatever. But like I feel like people understand like when a film isn't, if it has a THAC ending, or if it has like
that's true,
if it's not quite finished, because like that is essentially like what THAC, and it's
when people see THAC in the title and they get it. They're not going to be as critical as the actual creator of the film.
So I think like you should always try and keep at it with whatever you're making.
Be happy to have made a film, to have entered successfully.
But I guess
with that I think we shall.
It's a nice way to end it, I think.
We should say goodbye.
Thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun. It's fun to actually talk with some people in that.
It is nice to actually go in depth.
Absolutely, yeah. I've really enjoyed this, and
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.